All right, let's read the Kraken. All right. In the United States District with two C's Court, Northern. Okay, the Kraken can't spell. Okay, Dist or Coict, District Coict of Georgia, Atlanta Division. You got it. This is starting well. Correco, Jaquan Pearson, Vicky Townsend, Consiglio, nice. Um, Gloria K. Godwin, James Kenneth Carroll, Carolyn Hall Fisher, Kathleen Alston Latham, and Brian J. Van Gundy are the plaintiffs. Versus Brian Kemp in his official capacity as governor of Georgia. Seriously, Raffens Spurg, Brad Spurg, that's what we're going to call him. In his official capacity as Secretary of State and Chair of the Georgian State Election Board, David J. Worley. In his official capacity as a member of the Georgia State Election Board, Rebecca N. Sullivan, no space between the dot and the Sullivan. Is that huge? No, no space. In her official capacity as a member of the Georgia State Election Board, Matthew Mashburn. In his official capacity as a member of the Georgia State Election Board, Ann, A-N-H-L-E, Ann Lee, A-N-H-L-E, I'm supposing, Ann Lee, all right. In her official capacity as a member of Georgia State Election Board are the defendants. Complaint for declaratory emergency and permanent injunction relief. Declaratory emergency and permanent injunction. Oh, all of the above. Okay. Nature of the action. This civil action brings to light a massive election fraud, multiple violations of Georgia laws, including OCGA squiggly squiggly 21-230 D, 21-231, 21-233.1, and squiggly line 21-2-522, and multiple constitutional violations as shown by fact witnesses to specific incidents, multiple expert witness, and the sheer mathematical impossibilities found in the Georgia 2020 general election, as shown by fact witnesses to specific incidents. I would think incidences, but probably not. So number one, as a civil action, the plaintiff's burden of proof is a preponderance of the evidence to show, as the Georgia Supreme Court has made clear, that I was not incumbent upon plaintiff to show how the voters would have voted if their absentee ballots had been regular. Plaintiff only had to show that there were enough irregular ballots to place in doubt the results. That's big time because it's going to overturn the election or we're going to throw it out. Well, that I think right here it just says you don't have to say if it's going to overturn it. You just have to make a doubt. That's Meade versus Sheffield, 278 Georgia, douche. All right. These little guys are great, so I'm reading them. Number one, the same pattern of election fraud and voter fraud writ large occurred in all the swing states with only minor variations. See experts' report regarding Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Wisconsin. See William N. Biggs, I think that Deckel, attached here. Exhibit 1, reports with amendment. Indeed, we believe that in Arizona, at least 35,000 votes were illegally added to Mr. Biden's vote count. There's some more of that. Number 2, the scheme and artifice to defraud was for the purpose of illegally and fraudulently manipulating the vote count to make certain the election of Joe Biden as president of the United States. Now let's do that again. Number 2, the scheme and artifice to defraud was for the purpose of illegally and fraudulently manipulating the vote count to make certain the election of Joe Biden as president of the United States. That's what they were trying to do. All right, groovy. The fraud was executed by many means. Number two, we'll go down there. But the most fraudulently troubling, insidious, and egregious is the systematic adaptation of old-fashioned ballot stuffing. Okay, that's okay. But the most fundamentally troubling, insidious, and egregious is the systematic adaptation of old-fashioned ballot stuffing. It has now been amplified and rendered virtually invisible by computer software created and run by domestic and foreign actors for that very purpose. It was designed to do that. Mathematical and statistical anomalies rising to the level of impossibilities, as shown by affidavits of multiple witnesses, documentation, and expert testimony. Events? I don't know what that word means. This scheme across the state of Georgia. So this expert testimony, it's all over the place. All right, especially egregious conduct arose in Forsyth, Paulding, Cherokee, Hall, and Barrow County. This scheme and artifice, I gotta look that word up, to defraud affected tens of, okay, this scheme and artifice, I keep getting jacked on that word. The scheme and artifice to defraud, I feel like there should be a comma, affected tens of thousands of votes in Georgia alone and rigged the election in Georgia for Joe Biden. All right, so there's a bunch of fraud going on. All right, the little number two is groovy. 50 USC 207, squiggly line 20701, requires retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections. Deposit with custodian, penalty for violation, but as will be shown, wide patterns of misconduct with ballots show preservation of election records have not been kept, and Dominion logs are only voluntary with no system-wide preservation system. Are you joking? So we got to keep all this stuff, but not the stuff on Dominion. There's no law about that. That's bullpoopy. All right, number four, the massive fraud begins with the election software and hardware from Dominion Voting System Corporation, Dominion, only recently purchased and rushed into use by defendants Governor Brian Kemp, Secretary of State Brad Spurg, and Georgia Board of Elections Sequoia Voting Georgia Board of Elections. Sequoia voting machines were used in 16 states and the District of Columbia in 2006. Smartmatic, which has revenue of about 100 million bones, focuses on Venezuela and other markets outside the United States. Number three, after selling Sequoia, Smartmatic's chief executive Anthony Mujica, can we get like Bob Smith or something? Anthony Mujica, Mr. Mujica said, yo, I'm right in the middle of like reading the Kraken here. Sidney Powell like dropped it. Yeah, man, I'm reading the Kraken. That's the stuff Sidney Powell just dropped. I'll tell you all about it, but I got to get through it here real quick. It's 104 pages of just like talk. All right. I'll tell you all about it. All right, peace. All right. After selling Sequoia, Smartmatic's chief executive, Anthony Mr. Douche said he hoped Smartmatic would work with Sequoia on projects in the United States through though Smartmatic wouldn't take an equity stake. Though Smartmatic, yo, Sequoia, I'll work with you. Don't even worry about it. Nah, you ain't got to pay me. All right, dig it. Weird. Equity stake. I think that's what that means. ID. I don't know what that means. Smartmatic and Dominion were founded by foreign oligarchs, I hate that word, and dictators, I know that one, to ensure computerized ballot stuffing and vote manipulation to whatever level was needed to make certain Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez never lost another election. See redacted whistleblower affidavit attached as Exhibit 2. Notably, Chavez won every election thereafter. So that little number 3, see wallstreetjournal.com, Smartmatic, to sell U.S. unit and probe into Venezuelan link by Bob Davis 12/22/06 and all that business. All right, check that out. All right, as set forth in the accompanying whistleblower affidavit, the Smartmatic software was designed to manipulate Venezuelan elections in favor of dictator Hugo Chavez. Smartmatic's electrical technology was called Sistema de Gestión Electoral. The Electoral Management System, the EMS. Smartmatic was a pioneer in the area of computing systems. Their systems provided for transmission of voting data over the internet to a computerized central tabulating center. The voting machines themselves had a digital display fingerprint recognition feature to identify the voter and print out the voter's ballot. The voter's fingerprint was linked to a computerized record of the voter's identity. Ugh. Smartmatic created and operated the entire system. Ugh. Yuck. That's doo-doo. We ain't got to go that far. The paper's cool. All right, number 7. A core requirement of the Smartmatic software design was the software's ability to hide its manipulation of votes from any audit. As we've seen, I mean, they're really freaking smart at this. Like, these guys were really dope. We were just doper. As the whistleblower explains, Chavez was most insistent that Smartmatic designed the system in a way that the system could change the vote of each voter without being detected. He wanted the software itself to function in such a manner that if the voter were to place their thumbprint or fingerprint on a scanner, then the thumbprint would be tied to the record of the voter's name and identity as having voted, but that voter would not be tracked to the changed vote. Okay, he made it clear that the system would have to be set up to not leave any evidence of the changed vote for a specific voter, and that there would be no evidence to show or nothing to contradict that the name or fingerprint or thumbprint was going with a changed vote. Smartmatic agreed to create such a system and produce a software and hardware that accomplished the result for President Chavez. See IDC Exhibit 3, Alf Cordozo, affidavit, Cordozo, attached here too. Okay, so douche. Yeah, we're going to change your vote, but if you ever try to look into it, you're going to look at it and be like, yep, that was my vote, but it didn't do it. It did change. Okay. I mean, that seems pretty, you would want that, yeah? All right. The design and features of the Dominion software do not permit a simple audit to reveal its misallocations. Redistribution, and deletion of votes. First, the system's central... you guys are wicked smart, because I've been watching y'all just be like, yeah, y'all cheated. They didn't do a good enough job. That's so great that you were so much better than them. All right, moving on. First, the system's central accumulator does not include a protected real-time audit log that maintains the date and timestamp of all significant election events. Dude, I was wondering that. You can program that out, but can you program that out? Okay, key components of the system utilize unprotected logs. Essentially, this allows all unauthorized user the opportunity to arbitrarily add, modify, or remove log entries, causing the machine to log election events that do not reflect actual voting tabulations, or more specifically, do not reflect the actual votes of or the will of the people. See Hursty Declaration, Exhibit 4, attached exhibit, October 2019 declaration. October 2019 declaration in document said October, November. Yeah. August 2000. Oh. Huh. All right. That's before the election. Okay. Indeed, under the professional standards within the industry in auditing and forensics analysis, when a log is unprotected and can be altered, it can no longer serve the purpose of an audit log. There is incontrovertible. There's like no doubt. Okay, so there's no no doubt physical evidence that the standards of physical security of the voting machines and the software were breached, and machines were connected to the internet in violation of professional standards and state and federal laws. Yeah, man. Yep. Moreover, lies and conduct of Fulton County election workers about a delay in voting at State Farm Arena and the reasons for it evince the fraud. Okay, so now that doesn't mean what I thought it meant. Reason for it evince the fraud. I don't know what that means. Okay, specifically, video from the State Farm Arena in Fulton County shows that on November 3rd, after the polls closed, election workers falsely claimed a water leak required the facility to close. All poll workers and challengers were evacuated for several hours at about 10 p.m. However, several election workers remain unsupervised and unchallenged working at the computers for the voting tabulation machines until after 1 a.m. What y'all doing up in that mug? Number 12, defendant Kemp and Spurg rushed through the purchase of Dominion voting machines and software in 2019 for the 2020 presidential election. A certificate from the Secretary of State was awarded to Dominion voting systems, but is undated. Look at that little Exhibit 5, copy certification, douche, douche, douche. Similarly, a test report is signed by Michael Walker that was an easy one. Come on, Walker, as project manager, but is also undated. Look at that. Y'all didn't do nothing right. Defendant Kemp and Spurg disregarded all the concerns that caused Dominion software to be rejected by the Texas Board of Elections in 2018, namely that it was vulnerable and undetectable and non-auditable manipulation. Namely that it was vulnerable to undetectable and non-auditable manipulation. You freaking knew it. An industry expert, Dr. Andrew Appel, Princeton professor of computer science and election security expert. What if she's like code monkey? That'd be cool. Expert was recently observed with reference to Dominion voting machines. Now, who are you again? Dr. Andrew Appel, Princeton professor of computer science and election security expert, was recently observed with reference to Dominion voting machines. I figured out how to make a slightly different computer program that just before the polls were closed, it switched some of the votes around from one candidate to the other. I wrote that computer program into a memory chip, and now to hack a voting machine, you just need 7 minutes alone with it and a screwdriver. Attached here to Exhibit 7, study ballot marketing devices, BMDs, cannot assure the will of the voter by Andrew Appel, Princeton, nice, Georgia Tech, pretty nice, Berkeley, nice, 2018. Full unredacted copies of all exhibits have been filed under seal with the court, and plaintiffs have simultaneously moved for their protective order. Moved for a protective order. Oh, douche. Yeah, hide them away, dude. That's crazy. That's freaky. 14, as explained and demonstrated in the accompanying redacted declaration of a former electronic intelligence analyst under the 305th Military Intelligence with experience gathering SAM missile system electronic intelligence. SAM missile system electronic intelligence. What don't you bring to you don't bring a quiver to something? What have you. So he knows all about SAM. Let's read that again. As explained and demonstrated in the accompanying redacted declaration of a former electronic intelligence analyst under the 305th Military Intelligence with experience gathering SAM missile system electronic intelligence, the Dominion software was accessed by agents acting on behalf of China and Iran in order to monitor and manipulate elections, including most recent U.S. general election in 2020. Wow. This declaration further includes a copy of the patent records for Dominion system in which Eric Coomer is listed as the first of the investors of Dominion voting system. See attached here to Exhibit 8, copy of redacted witness affidavit, 17 pages. So you know all about Sam. She's cool. And the Dominion software was accessed by agents acting on behalf of China and Iran. There's too many cooks in this kitchen. That's crazy, man. Everybody has access to it. They can't all be on the same page. All right. Expert Navid Kesha, cheese and crackers, guys. Expert Nikki explains that U.S. intelligence services had developed tools to infiltrate foreign voting systems, including Dominion. Let's do it again. Expert Nikki explains that U.S. intelligence services, yes, had developed tools to infiltrate foreign voting systems, including Dominion. He states that Dominion's software is vulnerable to data manipulation by unauthorized means and permitted election data to be altered in all battleground states. He concludes that hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast for President Trump in the 2020 general election were transferred to former Vice President Biden. Check it out at Exhibit 26. Additionally, incontrovertible evidence Board of Elections records demonstrate that at least 96,600 absentee ballots were requested and counted, but were never recorded as being returned to county election boards by the voters. Thus, at minimum, 96,600 votes must be disregarded. See attachment here to Exhibit 9R. Okay, that seems important. Additionally, there's no way this can be wrong evidence. Board of Election records demonstrates that at least 96,600 absentee ballots were requested. Okay, yeah. And counted, but were never recorded as being returned to county election boards by the voters. Oh. They sent them out, but they never got them back, but they said they did. I got it. Oh, doo-doo. That's awesome. All right. The Dominion system used in Georgia erodes and undermines the reconciliation of the numbers of voters and the number of ballots cast, such that these figures are permitted to be unreconciled, opening the door to ballot stuffing and fraud. Golly dang, what? The Dominion system used in Georgia erodes and undermines the reconciliation of the number of voters and the number of ballots cast. It erodes and undermines the really important information we need, such that these figures are permitted to be unreconcilable. We don't get it. Opening the door to ballot stuffing and fraud. Okay, I mean, that's obviously bad. The collapse of reconciliation was seen in Georgia's primary and runoff election this year, and in the November election, where it was discovered during the hand audit that 3,300 votes were found on memory sticks that were not uploaded on election night. Plus, in Floyd County, another 2,600 absentee ballots had not been scanned. These found votes reduced Biden's lead over Donald Trump. See the dish number 6. All right. Number 6 says recount find. Is it me? Recounts, probably plural. Finds, maybe, thousands of Georgia votes. Atlanta Journal-Constitution by Mark and all that. 11/19/20. Recount finds. Yeah. Fines. There we go. Thousands. Georgia's 18. Georgia's election officials and poll workers exasperated and helped, whether knowingly or unknowingly, the Dominion system carry out massive voter manipulation by refusing to observe statutory safeguards for absentee ballots. Election officials failed to verify signatures and check security envelopes. They barred challengers from observing the count, which also facilitated the fraud. You're all in on it. Biatches. Expert analysis of the actual vote set forth below demonstrates that at least 96,600 votes were illegally counted during the Georgia 2020 general election. All the evidence and allegation herein is more than sufficient to place the result of the election in doubt. More evidence arrives by the day, and discovery should be ordered immediately. I mean, like, order that discovery. Chicken and waffle and some discovery. Oh, chicken and waffle. That'd be great. And some discovery would be awesome. Clear that. Okay, Georgia Law OCGA 21-5-552 provides for a contest of an election where, so law says misconduct, fraud, irregularity by any primary or election official or officials sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. When illegal votes have been received or legal votes rejected at the polls sufficient to change or place in doubt the result, for any error in counting the votes or declaring the result of a primary or election, if such error would change the result, or for any other cause which shows that another was the person legally nominated, elected, or eligible to compete in a runoff primary or election. Okay, for any other cause which shows that another was the person legally nominated. So that other dude was totally nominated or elected or eligible to compete in a runoff primary or election. I could have sworn something was said different earlier, but as further set forth below, all of the above grounds have been satisfied and compel this court to set aside the 2020 general election results, which fraudulently concluded that Mr. Biden, douche, defeated President Trump by 12,670 votes. Separately and independently, there are sufficient constitutional grounds to set aside the election result due to the defendant's failure to observe statutory requirements for the processing and counting of absentee ballots, which led to the tabulation of more than 50,000 illegal ballots. The parties. Who doesn't like parties? 23. Plaintiff Jacques is a registered voter who resides in Augusta, Georgia. Augusta's a nice place. He's a nominee of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Georgia. He was standing to bring this action under Carson versus Simmons 2020 U.S. Appellate Lexus 34184 8th Circuit, October 29th, 2020. He brings this action to set aside and decertify the election results for the office of the President of the United States that was certified by the Georgia Secretary of State on November 20, 2020. 11/20/2020. The certified results showed a plurality of 12,670 votes in favor of the former Vice President Joe Biden over President Trump. So he's all like, nah, that stuff's not cool. Plaintiff Vicky Townsend, this seems worth it. Vicky Townsend Consiglio is a registered voter who resides in Henry County, Georgia. She is a nominee of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Georgia. 25. Plaintiff Gloria K. Oh, these parties get it. Plaintiff Gloria K. Godwin is a registered voter who resides in Pierce County, Georgia. She is a nominee of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Georgia. This is interesting. Plaintiff James Kenneth Carroll is a registered voter who resides in Dodge County, Georgia. He is a nominee of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Georgia. How many are there? I'm wondering now. Plaintiff Carol Hall Fisher is a registered voter who resides in Forsyth County, Georgia. She is a nominee of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Georgia. Plaintiff Kathleen Alston Latham is a registered voter who resides in Coffee County, Georgia. I could use some. A little bit of that crack juice. Um, uh, Lo and behold, she is a nominee of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Georgia. Plaintiff Jason M. Shepard, is the chairman of the Cobb County Republican Party and brings this action in his official capacity on behalf of the Cobb County Republican Party. Well, thank you, Cobb County Republican Party. Why don't you stick your head out of the hole there? How about some other Republicans do the same thing? Thank you, Cobb County. Plaintiff Brian J. Van Gundy is a registered voter in Gwinnett County, Georgia. He is the assistant secretary of the Georgia Republican Party. Right on. 31 defendant. Oh yeah, let's talk about these douchebags. 31 defendant Governor Brian Kemp, traitor like a douche. Governor of Georgia is named here in his official capacity as governor of the state of Georgia. On or about June 9th, 2019, Governor Kemp bought the new Dominion voting system for Georgia, budgeting $150 million for the machines. Critics are quoted, led by Abrams, Democrats fought the legislation and pointed to cybersecurity expert who warned it would leave Georgia's elections susceptible to hacking and tampering. And just this week, the Fair Fight voting rights group, started by Stacey Abrams herself, launched a television ad critical of the bill. In a statement Thursday, the group called it corruption at its worst and a waste of money on hackable voting machines. Just this week, wait, let me make sure I'm douching this right. On or about June 19th, bought the machines and everything like that. Critics are quoted, led by Abrams. Democrats fought the legislation and pointed to cybersecurity. Yeah, they were like, no, this is bad. Hacking and everything. And just this week, the Fair Fight voting rights group, started by just this week. Are we still in this or really just this week? Okay. Georgia governor linked law to replace voting machines, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Douche. I'm going to have to take a look at that because I don't understand the just this week part. Defendant Brad Spurg, Secretary Spurg, is named herein in his official capacity as Secretary of State of the state of Georgia and the chief election official for the state of Georgia pursuant to Georgia's election code and OCGA squiggly line 21250. Secretary Spurg is a state official subject to suit in his official capacity because his office imbues him, kind of like I think gives him, no, imbues him with the responsibility. Oh, like you got to do this. Okay. Him with the responsibility to enforce the election laws. Grizzle versus Kemp, 634 F3D 1314 1319 11th Circuit 2011. Election laws. Okay, I guess that just clarifies that. Secretary Spurg serves as the chairperson of Georgia's State Election Board, which promulgates and enforces rules and regulations to, obtain, that's probably what that is, obtain uniformity in the practices and proceedings of election officials, as well as legality and purity in all primaries and general elections, and 2, be conducive to fair, legal, and orderly conduct of primaries and general elections. You got to make sure this stuff is fair and uniform. All right, dig it. COCGA 2 squiggly lines 21 to 30 B D D 21 to 31 21 to 33 1. Secretary Spurg, as Georgia's chief election officer, is further responsible for the administration of the state laws affecting voting, including the absentee voting system C, OCGA, squiggly line 21-2-50 B. 33. Defendant Rebecca N. Sullivan. Defendant, yeah. Rebecca N. Sullivan, David J. Worley, Matthew Mashburn, and Ann Lee. Hereafter, the State Election Board are members of the State Election Board in Georgia responsible for formulating, adopting, and promulgating such rules and regulations consistent with law as will be conducive to the fair, legal, and orderly conduct and primaries and elections. OCGA squiggly line 21-2-31, number 2 in the thing. Further, the State Election Board promulgates, now it's important, promulgates rules and regulations to define uniform and non-discriminatory standards. Promulgates. I'm sure I kind of know what that means, but all right. Rules and regulations to define uniform and non-discriminatory standards concerning what constitutes a vote and what will be counted as a vote for each category of voting system in Georgia. Okay, so it promulgates the rules and regulations to define uniform and non-discriminatory standards concerning what constitutes a vote. Okay, I got it. And what will be counted as a vote for each category of voting system. All right, cool. In Georgia. Got it now. OCGA squiggly line 21-2-31-7. The State Election Board personally and through the conduct of the board's employees, officers, agents, and servants acted under color of state law at all times relevant to this action and are sued for emergency declaration and injunctive relief in their official capacities. No clue what I just read. All right. The State Election Board personally and through the conduct of the board's employees, officers, agents, and servants acted under color of state law at all times relevant to this action and are sued for emergency, declaratory, and injunctive relief in their official capacities. You had to do what you did under a certain set of rules. And because you didn't, we're coming after you. I think that's what I just read. Jurisdiction and venue. The court has subject matter jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. 1331, which provides the district court shall have original jurisdiction of all civil actions arising under the Constitution, laws, or treaties for the United States. 35. This court also has subject matter jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. 1343 because this action involves a federal election for President of the United States, a significant departure from the legislative scheme for appointing president-electors presented a federal constitutional question. That was Bush v. Gore, 531 U.S. 98, 113, 2000. Rehnquist, C.J. concurring. They're like, yeah, that's cool. Because of Smiley and Holmes back in like 1932. Okay, the jurisdiction of the court to grant declaratory relief is confirmed by 28 U.S.C. 2201 and 2202 and by Rule 57 and 65 Fed R. Civ P7. 37. The court has jurisdiction over the related Georgia constitutional claims and state law claims under 28 U.S.C. 1367. 38. In Georgia, the legislature. What? Let's say it together. In Georgia, the legislature is the General Assembly. Suck it, because here comes 39. Because the United States Constitution reserves the state legislature the power to set the time, place, and manner of holding elections for Congress and the President, executive officers, including but not limited to Secretary Spurg, have no authority to exercise that power unilaterally, much less flout existing legislation or the Constitution itself. I don't know what the word flout is, but you can't do it. So I like that 39 business right there. Because the United States Constitution reserves the state legislatures the power to set the time, place, and manner of holding elections for Congress and the president, state executive officers, those D-bags, including but not limited to Mr. Spurg, have no authority to exercise that power unilaterally, much less, I wish I knew what flout meant, existing legislation or the Constitution itself. You can't do that. Legislature had to do it, but y'all are making rules on the side. It's no good, like all around. Like Georgia's douched, like completely. There is no way any vote can stand in that state. You don't know what vote is what. Anyway, statement of facts. Let's throw some facts out there. 40. Plaintiffs bring this action under 42 U.S.C. Squiggly Line 1983 and 1988, and under Georgia law OCGA Squiggly Line 21-2-522 to remedy deprivations of rights. Plaintiffs brings this action to remedy you deprived my rights, privileges, and immunities secured by the Constitution and laws of the United States, and to contest the election results. Let's do it. Well, yeah, hold on a second. All right. All right, the United States Constitution sets forth the authority to regulate. Oh, tell me what you're going to regulate. It ain't the coof. It's just sick. I mean, and so 41, the United States Constitution set forth the authority to regulate federal elections. The Constitution provides the times, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the place of choosing senators. U.S. Constitution, Art I, squiggly line 4, Elections Clause. Now hold on a second. You can douche all that, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. So if you knew in Congress that this was going to be a problem, you should have spoken up, because you have you got the power to change it preemptively. Well, that's interesting. You didn't do your jobs. Of course not. See, that's the sick part. It's a dirty one. It gets right in there. Hoo-wee, T-Shane. Ain't nobody gonna go and get that coof test. All right. So, with respect to the appointment and douche, hold on a second. Constitution provides each state shall, yes. Wait. Nope. With respect to the appointment of presidential electors, the Constitution provides each state shall appoint, in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct, a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. U.S. Constitution, Art 2, squiggly line 1, elector clause. Okay, so we got election clause, electors clause. All right, groovy. So you can have all these dudes, the electors, but they can't do that or they can't be an elector. Okay. Uh, Neither defendant is a legislature as required under the Elections Clause or Electors Clause. The legislature is the representative body which makes, interesting, the laws of the people. Smiley said it on page 285 of the US 365. Regulations of congressional and presidential elections, thus, must be in accordance with the method which the state has prescribed for legislative enactments. ID at 367. See also Arizona State Legislature versus Arizona Independent Redistricting something 576 US 787 135 South Court 2652 2668 US 2015. While the Elections Clause was not adopted to diminish a state's authority to determine its own lawmaking processes, Arizona State Legislature 135S Court at 267, it does hold states accountable to their chosen processes when it comes to regulating federal elections, ID at 2668, a significant departure from the legislative scheme for appointing presidential electors presents a federal constitutional question. That was Bush on 531 U.S. at 113, Rehnquist CJ concurring, and Smiley was all like, yeah, 28.5 U.S. at 365, I'm down. So 45, plaintiffs also bring this action under Georgia law OCGA squiggly line 21-2-522 grounds for contest. A result of a grounds for contest. Okay. A result of a primary or election may be contested on one or more of the following grounds: misconduct, fraud, or irregularity by any primary or election official or officials sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. All right. I've read this somehow. Okay. When the defendant is ineligible for the nomination or office in dispute. The result of a primary or election, okay, may be contested on one or more of the following grounds: misconduct, fraud, or irregularity by any primary or election official or officials sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. So misconduct, irregularity, I don't know, they changed the rules, so I don't know if those dudes fall under that. But this one, when the defendant is ineligible for the nomination or office in dispute. Hunter Biden's laptop kind of does that to Joe Biden. It's kind of weird. When illegal votes have been received or legal votes rejected at the polls sufficient to change or place in doubt the results. I wonder if they're going to do something about the mailing, because that 96,600 could go there. For any error in counting the votes or declaring the results of the primary or election, in such error would change the results, or, I think it'd go there too, for any other cause which shows that another was the person legally nominated, elected, or eligible to compete in a runoff primary or election. And that's the old OCG. I'm going to call it the OG squiggly line 21-522. 46 under OG squiggly line 21-2-10, presidential electors are elected. Presidential electors are elected. Okay, that's simple. Under OG squiggly line 21-2-386 with a little A and an L, I think, and a B. The Georgia legislature instructed the county registrars and clerks, the county officials, to handle the absentee ballots as directed therein. The Georgia legislature set forth the procedures to be used by each municipality for appointing the absentee ballot clerks to ensure that such clerks would perform the duties set forth in Article COG squiggly line 21-2-380 point 1. 48. Now, let's make sure we got that, actually. Georgia's legislature instructed the county registrars and clerks to handle the absentee ballot. Okay, the legislature told those guys to handle the ballots, set forth a procedure used by each municipality for appointing the absentee ballot clerks to ensure. Okay, so you gave them rules and to ensure they perform their duty forth in. Okay, so you gave them rules on what people to choose. Okay, great. The Georgia Election Code instructs those who handle absentee ballots to follow a clear procedure. Well, what is that clear procedure? Upon receipt of each absentee ballot, a registrar or clerk shall write the day and hour of the receipt of the ballot on its envelope. The registrar or clerk shall, in big bold letters, then compare and identify information on the oath with the information on file in his or her office. Shall compare the signature or make on the oath with the signature or mark on the absentee elector's voter card or the most recent update to such absentee elector's voter registration card and application for absentee ballot or a facsimile of said signature. Or there's a lot of things you could do. Maker taken from said card or application, and there's a lot of things you can do there. And shall, if the information and signature appear to be valid and other identifying information appears to be correct, so certify by signing and initialing his or her name below the voter's oath. Each elector's name so certified shall be listed by the registrars or clerk on the numbered list of absentee voters prepared for his or her precinct. Yo, how many of those didn't happen? Oh my dad. Wow. Whose names are on what ballots? That's pretty cool. If they're dirty ballots, your name's on it. Well, rock on. Well, that's according to OG squiggly line 21-2-386 little a. Let's call it a I this time. B. Oh, emphasis added. Yeah, there's some emphasis added there. Totally. They need to have. Dude, they should have signed off on every single one of those. What do you want to bet they didn't? Under OG squiggly line 21-2-386 little a big I guess. C. The Georgia legislature also established a clear and efficient process to be used by county officials if they determine that an elector had failed to sign the oath on the outside of the envelope enclosing the ballot, or that the signature does not conform with the signature on file in the registrar's or clerk's office, a defective absentee ballot. So totally, they establish a very clear process of what to do if they determine that they failed to sign the oath or the signature doesn't confirm, and they call it a defective absentee ballot. There's rules for what you do with that. The Georgia legislature also provided for the steps to be followed by county officials with respect to the defective absentee ballot. All right, let's find out what they're supposed to do. And we're in bold here, so it's important. If the elector has failed to sign the oath, or if the signature does not appear to be valid, or if the elector has failed to furnish, if the elector has failed to sign the oath, or if the signature does not appear to be valid, fantastic, or if the elector has failed to furnish required information or information so furnished does not conform with that on file in the registrar's or clerk's office, kind of big time, or if the elector is otherwise found disqualified to vote, the registrar or clerk shall write across the face of the envelope, rejected, giving the reason therefore, because you suck. The Board of Registrars or absentee ballot clerk shall promptly notify the elector of such rejection. Immediately, y'all got rejected. You got to know it. A copy of which notification shall, absolutely must, be retained in the files of the Board of Registrars and or absentee ballot clerk for at least 1 year. All right, then. Interesting. 1 year. We should have all this business then. According to OG squiggly line 21-2-386 little a1, see total emphasis added. I saw that. Defendants' unauthorized actions violated the Georgia Election Code and caused the processing of defective absentee ballots. So in 51, notwithstanding the clarity of the applicable statutes and the constitutional authority of the Georgia legislature's action on March 6, 2020, the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia, Secretary Sprague, and the state election board, who administered the state election, the administrators, entered into a compromise and settle agreement and release, the litigation settlement, if you will, with the Democratic Party of Georgia, Inc. The Democratic Party of Georgia, Inc. Yeah, because it's a business. Okay. The Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee. Okay, wait, hold on a second. Who administered the state election entered into a compromise and settle agreement and release. On March 6, 2020. Okay, I must need more information. So they kind of made a deal, a compromise and settlement agreement and release, the litigation settlement, with the Democrat Party of Georgia, Inc., the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee, and the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee, collectively the douchebags, setting forth different standards to be followed by the clerks and registrars in processing absentee ballots in the state of Georgia. And we know we can't do that. But who did it? So it was, notwithstanding the clarity of the applicable statutes and the constitutional authority for the Georgia state legislature's actions on March 6, 2020, the Secretary of State, yep, and the election board, yep, and those guys changed the rules. All right. No, I better plug my power in. Whoops. Ow. Dang it. Okay, you gotta come out there. You gotta go in there. Did we win? We won. All right, crack juice. And read some more. The settlement. I don't understand the settlement business. Okay. Hold on. Winner. All right. 52. Under the settlement, however, the administrators agreed to change the statutorily prescribed manner of handling absentee ballots in a manner that is not consistent with the laws promulgated by the Georgia legislature for elections in this state. Number 8, C, Democratic Party of Georgia, Inc., et al. V. Sprague, Civil Action File Number 119 CV douche douche douche, United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia. Huh. They had to do it in the courts. That's. It's like, I don't get it. Like, everybody knows this rule. Well, you just let them do it? Like, interesting. Everybody knows they can't do it. The settlement provides that the Secretary of State would issue an official election bulletin to county administrators overriding the statutory procedures prescribed for those officials. That power, however, does not belong to the Secretary of State under the United States Constitution. The settlement also changed the signature requirement, reducing it to a board process with discretion rather than enforcement of the signature requirement as statutorily required under OG 212386AI1, whatever. 55. The Georgia legislature instructed county registers and clerks, the county officials, regarding the handling of absentee ballots in OGS 212386 little A1. Yeah, B 21-2-381.1. The Georgia Election Code instructs those who handle absentee ballots to follow a clear procedure. Well, what is that procedure? I'll tell you. Upon receipt of each absentee ballot, a registrar or clerk shall write that they did. Wait, did we already read this? Oath, signature, information signature, valid, signing initially his or her name below the oath. Yes, we douche that. OG S212386A1B. So 56, the Georgia legislature prescribes procedures to ensure that any request for any absentee ballot must be accompanied by sufficient identification of the elector's identity. See OG squiggly line 21-2-381B1, providing in impertinent part in order to be found eligible to vote an absentee ballot in person at the registrar's office or absentee ballot's clerk's office, such person shall show one of the forms of identification listed in Code Section 212417. Something was weird. In order to be found eligible to vote an absentee ballot in person at the registrar's office or absentee ballot's clerk's office, such person shall show one of the forms of identification listed in this code here. All right. An affidavit testified under oath that it was also of particular interest to me to see the signatures were not being verified and that there were no corresponding envelopes seen in sight. Attached here to as Exhibit 10 of Myra Romera, Part 7. So that affidavit testified it was also of particular interest to see that signatures were not being verified. Okay, so somebody saw that. To reflect the very reason for process, it was documented that in the primary elections prior to the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, many ballots got to voters after the election. Further, it was confirmed that untold thousands of absentee ballot requests went unfulfilled, and tens of thousands of mailed ballots were rejected for multiple reasons, including arriving too late to be counted. See the Associated Press Vote by Mail Worries, a leaky pipeline in many states, August 8, 2020, with a little number 9. 59. Pursuant to the settlement, and administrators delegated their Pursuant to the settlement, the administrators delegated their responsibilities for determining when there was a signature mismatch by considering in good faith only partisan-based training. Additional guidance and training materials drafted by the Democrat Party agencies representatives contradicting OG squiggly line 21-231. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. The Democrats wrote the rule book? Pursuant to the settlement. Okay, the settlement is what Spur did with all the Dems. How? It's so weird. How? Pursuant to the settlement, The administrators delegated their responsibility for determining when there was a signature mismatch by considering in good faith only partisan-based training. Additional guidance and training materials drafted by the Democrat Party agencies representatives contradicting OG squiggly line 21-231. Yeah, they wrote the rules. Unlawful early processing and absentee ballots. 60. In April 2020, the state election board adopted on a purportedly emergency basis Secretary of State Rule 183-1-14-0.9-15, processing ballots prior to Election Day. Under this rule, county election officials are authorized to begin processing absentee ballots up to 3 weeks before the election. Thus, the rule provides in part that 1. Beginning at 8 a.m. on the third Monday prior to the election day, the county election superintendent shall be authorized to open outer envelope of accepted absentee ballot. Total emphasis added. There's that thing, number 9. 61, Rule 183.114.0.9-15 is in direct and irreconcilable conflict with OG squiggly line 21-2-386A2, which prohibits the opening of absentee ballots until Election Day. Okay. April 2020. Emergency basis, Secretary of State rule, processing ballots. Oh. So the state election board said we can do it, and the rules are like, you totally can't do it until Election Day. After the opening of the polls on the day of the primary election or runoff, the registrars or absentee ballot clerk shall be authorized to open the outer envelope, on which is printed the oath of the elector in such a manner as not to destroy the oath printed thereon, provided, however, that the registrars or absentee ballot clerk shall not be authorized to remove the contents of such outer envelope or to open the inner envelope marked official absentee ballot, except as otherwise provided in the code section. Emphasis totally added. 62. In plain terms, the statute clearly prohibits opening absentee ballots prior to the election day, while the rule authorized doing so 3 weeks before the election day. There is no reconciling this conflict. The state election board has authority under OG squiggly line 21-2-31 to adopt lawful and legal rules and regulations, but no authority to promulgate a regulation that is directly contrary to an unambiguous statute. This is not ambiguous, it's straight up. Rule 183-1-14-0.9-15 is therefore plainly and indisputably unlawful. 63. The State Election Board readopted Rule on November 23, 2020 for the upcoming January 2021 runoff election. They did it again? What is going on? The unlawful audit procedures. Okay, so they did it again. They just don't care. This is weird. This is so weird. Unlawful audit procedures. 64. According to Secretary Spurg, in the presidential general election, 2,457,880 votes were cast in Georgia for President Donald J. Trump, and 2,472,002 votes were cast for Joseph R. Douchebag, which narrowed in Donald Trump's favor after the most recent recount. 65. Secretary Spurg declared that for the hand recount, per the instructions given to the counties as they conducted their audit-triggered full hand recounts, designated monitors will be given complete access to observe the process from the beginning. While the audit-triggered recount must be open to the public and media, designated monitors will be able to observe more closely. The general public and the press will be restricted to a public viewing area. Designated monitors will be able to watch the recount while standing close to the election's workers conducting while standing close to the elections workers conducting the recount. Political parties are allowed to designate a minimum of 2 monitors per county at a ratio of 1 monitor per party for every 10 audit boards in a county. Beyond being able to watch to ensure the recount is conducted fairly and securely, the 2-person audit boards conducting the hand count call out the votes as they are recounted, providing monitors and the public an additional way to keep tabs on the process. Cheese and crackers, all right. Office of Brad Spurg, monitors closely observing audit, triggered full hand recount. Transparency is built into the process. Okay. Well, let's see what actually happened. The audit was conducted OG Squiggland 21-2-498. This code section requires that the audit be completed in public view and authorized the State Board of Elections to promulgate regulations to administer an audit to ensure that collection of validly, dude. To ensure the collection of validly cast ballots is complete, accurate, and trustworthy throughout the audit. Wow. It's like the bad guys get to make the rules no matter what. It's weird. Plaintiffs can show the Democrat majority counties provided political parties and candidates, including the Trump campaign, no meaningful access to actual opportunity to review and assess the validity of mail-in ballots during the pre-canvassing meeting. Really? While in the audit or recount, they witnessed Trump votes being put into Biden piles. 68. Non-parties Amanda Coleman and Maria Dietrich are 2 individuals who volunteered to serve as designated monitors for the Donald Trump Presidential Campaign, Inc., the Trump campaign, on behalf of the Georgia Republican Party Republican Party at the hand recount, attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit 2 and 3, respectively, are true and correct copies of 1, the affidavit of Amanda Coleman in support of plaintiff's motion for temporary restraining order, the Coleman affidavit, and 2, the affidavit of Maria Dietrich in support of plaintiff's motion for temporary restraining order, the Dietrich affidavit. See Exhibit 11, Coleman affidavit 2, Exhibit 12, Dietrich affidavit 2. 69. The affidavits set forth various conduct amounting to federal crimes. The affidavits set forth various conduct amounting to federal crimes, clear improprieties, insufficiencies, and improper handling of ballots by county officials and their employees that Ms. Coleman and Ms. Dietrich personally observed while monitoring the hand count. See Exhibit 11, Coleman Affidavit 3 through 10, Exhibit 12, Dietrich Affidavit 4 through 14, 70. As a result of her observation of the hand recount as a Republican Party monitor, Ms. Dietrich declared, There has been no meaningful way to review or audit any activity at the hand recount. There has been no, and I mean absolutely no, meaningful way to review or audit any activity at the hand recount. That's Ms. Dietrich. As a result of their observations of the hand recount and Republican Party monitors, Ms. Coleman likewise declared there was no way to tell if any counting was accurate or if activities was proper. There was no way to tell if any counting was accurate or if the activity was proper. Ms. Coleman. See Exhibit 12, Coleman Affidavit 12. 72. On Election Day, when the Republican poll watchers were, for a limited time, present and allowed to observe in various polling locations, they observed and reported numerous instances of election workers failing to follow the statutory mandates relating to 2 critical requirements among other issues. 1. A voter's right to spoil their mail-in ballot at their polling place on Election Day, and to then vote in person. They're allowed to do that, okay. And the ability of voters to vote provisionally on election day when a mail-in ballot has already been received for them. But when they did not cast those mail-in ballots, who sought to vote in person during early voting, but was told she already voted, she emphasized that she had not. The clerk told her she would add her manual. The clerk told her he would add her manually with no explanation as to who or how someone voted using her name. Attached here too is Exhibit 13, affidavit Ursula Wolf. She's all like, let me vote. And like, you already did. Another observer for the ballot recount testified that at no time did I witness any recounter or individual participate in the recount verifying signatures on mail-in ballots. Attached here to Exhibit 14, Nicholas Zer 74. In some counties, there was no actual hand. In some counties, there was no actual hand recounting of ballots during the hand recount, but rather county officials and their employees simply conducted another machine count of the same ballots. See Exhibit 9 and 10. That will not reveal the massive fraud of which plaintiffs complain. A large number of ballots were identical and likely fraudulent. An affidavit explains that she observed a batch of utterly pristine ballots. 14. Most of the ballots had already been handled. They had been written on by people and the edges were torn. They showed obvious use. However, one batch stood out. It was pristine. There was a difference in the texture of the paper. It was if they were intended for absentee use but had not been used for that purpose. It was as if they were intended for absentee use but had not been used for that purpose. There was a difference in the feel. These different ballots include a slightly depressed pre-fold so they could be easily folded and unfolded for use in the scanning machines. There were no markings on the ballots to show where they had come from or where they had been processed. These stood out. In my 20 years of experience of handling ballots, I observed that the markings for the candidates on the ballots were unusually uniform, perhaps even with a ballot marking device. By my estimation, in observing these ballots, approximately 98% constituted votes for Joe Biden. I only observed 2 of these ballots as votes for President Donald J. Trump. You should see that Exhibit 15 attached. That's crazy town. The same affidavit further testified specifically to the breach of the chain of custody, of the voting machines the night before the election, stating, oh man, this is a good one. Oh, it's raining a lot more now. Crack juice. Cigarette. Cough. Yes, I know. I know. It'll get better. The same affidavit further testified specifically to the breach of the chain of custody of the voting machines the night before the election, stating, we typically receive the machines, the ballot marking devices, on the Friday before the election, with a chain of custody letter to be signed on Sunday, indicating that we had received the machines and the counts on the machines when received, and that the machines have been scaled. In this case, we were asked to sign the chain of custody letter on Sunday, even though the machines were not delivered until 2 a.m. in the morning of the election, on the election day. So in this case, we were asked to sign the chain of custody letter on Sunday, even though the machines were not delivered until 2 a.m., probably on the morning of election day. In the morning on election day. 2 a.m. in the morning on election day. All right, got it. Well, that's no bueno. Cheese and crackers, this is crazy. The Milton precinct received its machines at 1 a.m. in the morning on election day. This is unacceptable, and voting machines should not be out of custody prior to an election day ID. All right. What voting machines, though? Like, what are we talking about? Uh, we'll figure that out later. Evidence of fraud, a pattern showing the absence of mistake. The pattern showing the absence of mistake. There wasn't a mistake there. It must have been on purpose. Oh, crazy town. Okay. Um, the stunning pattern of the nature and acts of fraud demonstrate an absence of mistakes. Why are we beating around the bush there? That's crazy. 78. The same affidavit, the same affiant further explained in sworn testimony that the breach included when we did receive the machines, they were not sealed or locked. The serial numbers were not what were reflected on the related documentation. Interesting. 79. The affiant, affiant, got it. The affiant testified that while in Henry County, I personally witnessed ballots cast for Donald Trump being placed in the pile for Joseph Biden. I witnessed this happen at Table A. See Exhibit 14, paragraph 2780. The affiant further testified that when it was brought to Mr. Pitt's, unfortunate name, attention, it was met with extreme hostility. At no time did I witness any ballot cast for Joseph Biden to be placed in the pile for Donald Trump. See Exhibit 14, paragraph 28. Another affiant in the mail-in ballot and absentee ballot recounting process testified in her sworn affidavit that on November 16, 2020, it was also of particular interest to me to see the signatures were not being verified and there were no corresponding envelopes seen in sight. You need to have those. See Exhibit 10 at paragraph 7. 82. Yet another affiant in the recount process testified that he received pushback and a lack of any cooperation and was even threatened as if he did something wrong when he pointed out the failure to follow the rules with observers while upon mail-in ballot recounting was occurring, stating, however, as an observer, I observed that the precinct had 12 counting tables, but only one monitor from the Republican Party. I brought it up to Eric Johnston since the recount rules provided for one monitor from each party per 10 tables or part thereof. See attached here to Exhibit 16, Ibrahim Ray's affidavit, 83. Another affiant explains a pattern of behavior that is alarming in his position as an observer in the recount on absentee ballots with barcodes. He testified this. I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray, placing them into the Biden tray. Let's do it again. I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt, am I saying that right? Receipt ballots with barcodes, they had barcodes, in the Trump tray. What am I missing? I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray, placing them into the Biden tray. I get what you're saying, but I don't get it, how it's written. I also witnessed the same 2 poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote and Jorgensen tray and removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray. They then took out all the ballots, took out all of the ballots out of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet. Man, you got me lost, man. I also witnessed the same 2 poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote and Jorgensen tray. And it seems like there's 2 actions here. And removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray. They then took out all of the ballots of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet. This must be his exact words, because when you write down somebody's exact words, we sound like absolute idiots. Um, well, that's how we talk right there. Like, really. I can't bust his balls, but cheese and crackers. It's hard to read. All right, 84. Another affiant, a Democrat, no less, testifies in his sworn affidavit that before he was forced to move back to where he could not see, he had in fact seen absentee ballots for Trump inserted into the Biden stack and counted as Biden votes. This occurred a few times, he says. See attached here to Exhibit 18 at paragraph 12, affidavit of Carlos Silva. Carlos Silva. Carlos Silva. David Silva. Got it. That's what it is. Okay. Yet another affiant testified about the lack of process and the hostility only towards the Republican Party, which is a violation of Equal Protection Clause. Of course it is. He testifies. I also observed throughout my 3 days in Atlanta, not once did anyone verify these ballots. In fact, there was no authentication process in place and no envelopes were observed or allowed to be observed. I saw hostility towards Republican observers, but never towards Democrat observers. Welcome to Atlanta. Both were identified by badges. That's a good idea. CID, what is ID? At paragraph, I guess, 13, 14, ID, whatever. 86. Another affiant explains that his ballot was not only not processed in accordance with the election laws, he witnessed people reviewing his ballot to decide where to place it, which violated the privacy of his ballot. And then when he tried to report it to a voter fraud line, he never received any contact or cooperation, stating, I voted early on October 12th at the precinct at Linwood Park. Linwood Park. I think we know that. Because of irregularities at the polling location, I called the voter fraud line to ask why persons were discussing my ballot and reviewing it to decide where to place it. When I called the state fraud line, I was directed to a worker in the office of the Secretary of State. See attached here to Exhibit 19, Andrea O'Neill affidavit, paragraph 3 probably. 87. He further testified that when he was an observer at the Lithuanian location, he saw many irregularities and specifically saw an auditor sort Biden votes that he collected and sorted into 10 ballot stacks, which the auditor did not show anyone. I wonder why he did that. ID page 88. Another affiant testified about the use of different paper for ballots that would constitute fraud, stating, I noticed that almost all of the ballots I received were for Biden. Many batches went 100% for Biden. I also observed that the watermark on at least 3 ballots were solid gray instead of transparent. I think those are the military ballots, leading me to believe that the ballot was counterfeit. I challenged this, and the election director said it was a legitimate ballot and was due to the use of different printers. Many ballots had markings for Biden only and no markings on the rest of the ballot. See attached here to Exhibit 20, affidavit Deborah J. Fisher, paragraph 5 and 6. An affiant testifies that while at the audit, while in Hendry County, I personally witnessed ballots cast for Donald Trump being placed in the pile for Joe Biden. I witnessed this happen at Table A. Have we seen this? See here too, attached Exhibit 22, Kevin Peter. Oh, maybe it's 2 people. Interesting. Another affiant testified that I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray, placing them in the Biden tray. I also witnessed the same 2 poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote or Jorgensen tray and removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray. This is weird. Why are we reading this again? They then took out all the ballots out of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet. I mean, we totally did that, didn't we? A Democrat testified in a sworn affidavit, I saw absentee ballot for Trump inserted into the Biden stack and counted as Biden votes. This occurred a few times. Have we already read this? 91. A Republican National Committee monitor in Georgia's election recount, Haley Socrates, told an undercover journalist that there are individuals counting ballots who had made continuous errors, writes O'Keefe. Project Veritas. Watch. Latest Project Veritas video reveals multiple ballots meant for Trump went to Biden in Georgia. All right, Project Veritas. Sweet. Let's see what we have here. The voting machines. Secrecy software used by voting machines throughout Georgia is crucial. Alrighty then. Soup's crucial. These violations of federal and state laws impacted the election of November 3, 2020, and set the predicate for the evidence of deliberate fraudulent conduct, manipulation, and lack of mistake that follows. Lack of mistake. The commonality and statewide nature of these legal violation renders the certification of the legal vote untenable and warrants immediate impoundment of voting machines and software used throughout Georgia for expert inspection and retrieval of software. Oh, yeah. Hannity said some stuff, multiple ballots. Yeah. Hannity, okay. An affiant who is a network and information cybersecurity expert, undersworn testimony explained that after studying the user manual, Code Monkey. Hold on, Code Monkey. This is super dope. We the people suck it, douchebags. Who is supporting Trump? Who is doing the work? We the people. It is so super dope. 93. An affiant who is a network and information cybersecurity expert known as Code Monkey, under sworn testimony explains that after studying the user manual for Dominion voting system democracy software, he learned that the information about scanned ballots can be tracked inside the software system for Dominion. That's what I'm talking about. Just because you don't have the date there or what have you, it's still a program, and that program still keeps track of time in some way. It's funky. Never mind. I'm not going to go into it. But it can. Yeah, well, of course you know that. When bulk ballot scanning and tabulation begins, the ImageCast central workstation operator will load a batch of ballots into the scanner feed tray and then start the scanning procedure within the software menu. The scanner then begins to scan the ballots which were loaded into the feed tray while the ImageCast Central software application tabulates votes in real time. Information about scanned ballots can be tracked inside the ImageCast Central software application. See attached here to Exhibit 2, Declaration of Ronald Watkins. Paragraph 11. 94. Affiant further explains that the central operator can remove or discard batches of votes. And we even saw that on freaking that video. After all the ballots loaded into the scanner's feed tray have been through the scanner, the ImageCast Central operator will remove the ballots from the tray, then have the option to either accept batch or discard the batch on the scanning menu. The old paragraph 8 there. Affiant further testifies that the Dominion Smartmatic user manual itself makes clear that the system allows for threshold settings to be set to mark all ballots as problem ballots for discretionary determination on where the vote goes. It states, the manual states, which is crazy because Dominion and all that stuff, they have all sorts of stuff on the internet that's like, dude, we're cheating. But anyway, it states, during the scanning process, the ImageCast Central software will detect how much a percentage coverage of the oval was filled in by the voter. The Dominion customer determines the thresholds of which the oval needs to be covered by a mark in order to qualify it as a valid vote. vote. If a ballot has a marginal mark which did not meet the specific thresholds set by the customer, then the ballot is considered a problem ballot and may be set aside into a folder named Not Cast Images. Through creatively tweaking the oval coverage threshold settings, it should be possible to set thresholds in such a way that a non-trivial amount of ballots are marked problem ballots and sent to the not cast image folder. It is possible for an administrator of the ImageCast Central workstation to view all images of scanned ballots which were deemed problem ballots by simply navigating via the standard Windows File Explorer to the folder named Not Cast Images, which holds ballots scanned of problem ballots. It is possible for an administrator of the ImageCast Central workstation to view and delete any individual ballot scans from the Not Cast Images folder by simply using the standard Windows delete and recycle bin functions provided by Windows 10 Pro operating system. Oh my dad. There's so many layers that you can get busted here. The applicant further explains the vulnerability in the system when the copy of the selected ballots that are approved in the results folder are made to a flash memory card, and that is connected to a Windows computer. All right, so here's this problem. It is possible for an administrator of the ImageCast Central workstation to view and delete any individual ballot scans from the Not Cast Images folder by simply using the standard Windows delete and recycle bin functions provided by the Windows 10 Pro operating system. The upload process is just a simple copying of the results folder containing vote tallies to a flash memory card connected to Windows 10 Pro machine. The copy process uses the standard drag and drop or copy paste mechanisms within the ubiquitous Windows File Explorer. While a simple procedure, this process may be error prone and is very vulnerable to malicious administrators. Yeah, totally. Have you ever moved a file over and you didn't get it all and you're like, what? And you don't know where it is? Totes my goats, there goes your votes. All right, it was announced on Monday, July 29, 2019, that Governor Kemp douche awarded a contract for 30,000 new voting machines to Dominion Voting Systems, scrapping the state's 17-year-old election voting equipment and replacing it with touch screens that print out ballots. Critics are quoted, led by Abrams, which is so weird. Critics are quoted, led by Abrams. Democrats fought the legislation and pointed to cybersecurity experts who warned it would leave Georgia's elections susceptible to hacking and tampering. And just this week, we did already read it, but whatever. Fair Fight, because I don't understand just this week. Voting rights group started by Stacey Abrams launched a television ad critical of the bill. I'd like to see it. In a statement Thursday, the group called it corruption at its worst and a waste of money on hackable voting machines. So this is Georgia buys new voting machines, presidential election, douche. All right, great. Stacey Abrams. It was further reported in 2019 that the new Dominion voting machines in Georgia, with Georgia's current voting system, there's no way to guarantee that electronic ballots accurately reflect the choices of voters because there's no paper backup to verify results, with it being reported that, and we totally know that because who was it that was like, it was Wisconsin I think was like, yo, how do we know that this person, where's the paper that says this person wanted an absentee ballot or what have you? She's like, yo, I totally freaking just douched it online. And the backup was, well, she's on the voter roll. Yeah, but where's the piece of paper that says douche, douche, douche? So the piece of paper is there. It's a automatic response that you requested it. There isn't an automatic response, I believe, of you getting it, but I don't know. Okay. Anyway, that was Wisconsin. But for the voting machine, no way to guarantee. Yeah, paper, paper, paper. Okay. Recounts are meaningless on the direct recording electronic voting machines because they simply reproduce the same numbers they originally generated. But paper ballots alone won't protect the sanctity of elections on the new touch screens called ballot marking devices. The new election system depends on voters to verify the printed text on their choices on their ballots, a step that many voters might not take. The state election board hasn't yet created regulations for how recounts and audits will be conducted. And paper ballots embed and paper ballots embed sections in barcodes that are only readable by scanning machines, leaving Georgians uncertain whether the barcode match their votes. And that was another cool one because it could just change just a little bit and it would say a different number. Georgia governor, like, again, a lot of this information is stuff that we dug. It was awesome watching it. And then one or whatever, as part of the scheme and artifice to defraud the plaintiffs, the candidates, and the voters of undiminished and unaltered voting results in a free and legal election, the defendants and other persons, known and unknown, committed the following violations of law. 50 U.S.C. squiggly line 20701 requires the retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections under penalty of fine and imprisonment. Oh, you got to have some papers? Requires the retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections under penalty of fine and imprisonment. Okay, so that's everything. So that's the voting machines as well that we should have. So let's talk about squiggly line 20701, retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections, deposit with custodian, penalty of violation. Retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections, deposit with custodian, penalty for violation. Okay, so it's not really a sentence. All right. Every officer of election shall retain and preserve for a period of 22 months from the date of any general, special, or primary election of which candidates for the office of president, vice president, presidential elector, member of the Senate, member of the House of Representatives, or resident commissioner from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico are voted for. What? Commonwealth, okay. All records and papers which come into his possession relating to any application, registration, payment of poll tax, or other act requisite to voting in such elections. That's everything, except that when required by law, such records and papers may be delivered to another officer of election, and except that if a state or a Commonwealth of Puerto Rico designates a custodian to retain and preserve these records and papers at the specific place, then such records and papers may be deposited with such custodian, and the duty to retain and preserve any record or paper so deposited shall devolve upon such custodian. Okay, you're responsible. Any officer of election or custodian who willfully fails to comply with this section shall be fined not more than $1,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. Well, that seems pretty light. Oh well, 50 USC squiggly line 20701 99. In the primaries, it was confirmed that the rapid introduction of new technologies and processes in state voting systems heightened the risk of foreign interference and insider tampering. That's true even if simple human error or local maneuvering for political advantage are more likely threats. Nice one. Oh, I like that. That's true even if simple human error or local maneuvering for political advantage are more likely threats. Um, the foreign interfering and insider tampering, dude. Where have our SBI been? Where have all the? I asked the same question, but I also see that we had a clear path. It had to be an inside job because we took care of the outside jobs. You don't hear anybody going, "Yo, dude, Russia." Nope. So it has to be an inside job. So it's very interesting that way. A Penn Wharton study from 2016 concluded that voters and their representatives in government, often prompted by news of high-profile voting problems, also have raised concern about the reliability and integrity of the voting process, and have increasingly called for use of modern technologies such as laptops and tablets to improve convenience. At what cost? As evidence of the defects or features of the Dominion Democracy Suite. Um, as described above, the same Dominion Democracy Suite was denied certification in Texas by the Secretary of State on January 24, 2020, specifically because of a lack of evidence of efficiency and accuracy, and to be safe from fraud and unauthorized manipulation. That's a good call, Texas. Well done. 15 threats to Georgia election loom despite new paper ballot voting. What? Study. Oh, Penn Wharton study. That should be a good one right there about the voting. Attached here to Exhibit 23, copy report review, Dominion voting machines, democracy suite, douche, election division, Secretary of State. Copy of report, review of Dominion voting system, January 20. Ooh, nice, 24, 2020. That'd be a good one too. Plaintiffs have since learned that the glitches, that word now, in the Dominion system that have the uniform effect of taking votes from Trump and shifting them to Biden have been widely reported in the press and confirmed by the analysis of independent experts. Analysis of independent experts. 103. Plaintiffs can show through expert and fact witness that Dominion Smartmatic systems have massive end-user vulnerability. Users on the ground have full administrative privileges to machines and software. Having been created to rig elections, the Dominion system is designed to facilitate vulnerabilities and allow a select few to determine which votes will be counted in any election. Workers were responsible for moving ballot data from polling place to the collector's office and inputting it into the correct folder. So let's see how that goes again. Having been created to rig elections, the Dominion system is designed to facilitate vulnerabilities and allow a select few people to determine which votes will be counted in any election. Workers were responsible for moving ballot data from polling place to collector's office and inputting it into the correct folder. Wow, that's crazy. Any anomaly, such as pen drips or bleeds, results in a ballot being rejected. It is then handed over to a poll worker to analyze and decide if it should be counted. This creates massive opportunity for purely discretionary and improper vote adjudication. Affiant witness, name redacted for security reasons, good call, number 18, in his sworn testimony explains he was selected for the National Security Guard detail of the President of Venezuela, and that he witnessed the creation of Smartmatic for the purpose of election vote manipulation to ensure Venezuelan dictator Hugo Chavez never lost an election, and he saw it work. ID. Purpose of this conspiracy was to create and operate a voting system that could change the votes in elections from votes against persons running the Venezuelan government to votes in their favor in order to maintain control of the government. All right, we heard that earlier. Exhibit 2, paragraph 6 and 9. Inventors. Smartmatic's incorporators and inventors have backgrounds evidencing their foreign connections, including Venezuela and Serbia, specifically its identified inventors. Application Smartmatic Corp. Inventor Lino, these guys, Iglesias, Roger somebody, Antonio somebody, Paul Babic, Jeffrey Navita. I'm going to call him Nevada. Danny Frenchie, Rodrigo Mendez, Salvador Scalacci, Jay's Lane. I can't use that one. Goncalves. And there's a lot of people. I can't do their names. The presence? Is that how you spell that? The presence, okay, of Smartmatic in the United States, owned by foreign nationals, and Dominion, a Canadian company with its offices such as the Office of General Counsel in Germany, would have to be approved by CFIUS. Yeah. Yeah, they would. CFIUS was created in 1988 by the Exxon Florio Amendment to the Defense Production Act of 1950. CFIUS authorizing statute was amended by the Foreign Investment and National Securities Act of 2007, FINSA. As amended, Section 721 of the DPA directs the President, acting through CFIUS, to review a covered transaction to determine the effects of the transaction on the national security of the United States. Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. We could use one of them. 50 USC app squiggly line 2170 BDB. B1A section 721 defines a covered transcript as any merger, acquisition, or takeover by or with any foreign persons which could result in foreign control of any person engaged in interstate commerce in the United States. ID squiggly line 2170A3, Rawls Corp. Versus Com on foreign investment, 758F3D 296324111 US FDC, blah, 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 214. Review of covered transcripts under Section 721 begins with CFIUS. As noted, CFIUS is chaired by the Treasury Secretary, and its members include the heads of various federal agencies and other high-ranking government officials with foreign policy, national security, and economic responsibility. The Treasury, there's something else with the Treasury that deals with elections, but I can't remember what it is. Then Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney wrote October 6, 2006, to the Secretary of the Treasury, Henry M. Paulson Jr., objecting to approval of the Dominion Smartmatic by CFIUS because of its corrupt Venezuelan organization, ownership, and control. See attached here to Exhibit 24, Carolyn Maloney, letter of October 6, 2006. Our own government has long known of this foreign interference on our most important right to vote, and it had either responded with incompetence, negligence, willful blindness, or abject corruption. In every CFIUS case, there are two TSSCI reports generated. One by the ODNI on the threat, and one by the DHS on risk to crucial infrastructure. Smartmatic was a known problem when it was nonetheless approved by CFIUS. That's a problem. The Wall Street Journal in 2006 did an investigative piece and found that Smartmatic came to prominence in 2004 when its machines were used in an election to recall President Chavez, which Mr. Chavez won handily, and which the Venezuelan opposition said was riddled with fraud. Smartmatic put together a consortium to conduct the recall election, including a company called Vista Corp. in which Smartmatic owners had a large stake. Of course they did. For a time, the Venezuelan government had a 28% stake in Bizta in exchange for a loan. Bizta paid off the loan in 2004, and Smartmatic bought the company the following year. But accusations of Chavez government control of Smartmatic never ended, especially since Smartmatic scrapped a simple corporate structure in which it was based in the United States with a Venezuelan subsidiary for a far more complex arrangement. The company said it made the changes for tax reasons, but critics, including Representative Carol Maloney, Democrat, New York, and TV journalist Lou Dobbs, straight up he was pissed, pounded the company for alleged links to the Chavez regime, ID. Since its purchase by Smartmatic, Sequoia's sales have risen sharply to a projected $200 million in 2006, said Smartmatic's chief executive Anthony Mujica. ID 108. Indeed, Mr. Kabuchi testified through his sworn affidavit that he born in Venezuela is cousin with, okay, my gosh. Indeed, Mr. Kabuki testified through his sworn affidavit that he was born in Venezuela and that he was cousins with Antonio or Anthony, him. And he has a personal knowledge of the fact that Anthony incorporated Smartmatic in the U.S. in 2000 with other family members in Venezuela listed as owners. He also has personal knowledge that Anthony Mujica manipulated Smartmatic to ensure the election for Chavez in 2004 the 2004 referendum in Venezuela. He also testified through his sworn affidavit that Anthony Mujica received tens of millions of dollars from 2003 to 2015 from the Venezuelan government to ensure Smartmatic technology would be implemented around the world, including the United States. Oh man, that's awesome. Tens of millions of dollars because Chavez like, I'm going to take this shit over. See attached here to Exhibit Juan Carlos Cabucci affidavit. Another affiant witness testifies that in Venezuela, she was in an official position related to elections and witnessed manipulation of petitions to prevent a removal of President Chavez, and because she protested, she was summarily dismissed. Corroborating the testimony of our secret witness and our witness, Mr. Kabuchi, cousin of Anthony Maguchi, who began Smartmatic, and this witness explains the vulnerability of the electronic voting system and Smartmatica to such manipulation. So she's like, yeah, that stuff, you shouldn't use it. All right, specific vulnerabilities of the system in question that have been documented or reported include, and it's probably a ton, barcode can override the voter's vote, as one University of California, Berkeley study shows. In all three of these machines, including Dominion voting machines, the ballot marking printer is in the same paper path as the mechanism to deposit marked ballots into an attached ballot box. This opens up a very serious security vulnerability. The voting machine can make the paper ballot to add votes or spoil already cast votes after the last time the voter sees the paper, and then deposit that marked ballot into the ballot box without the possibility of detection. See Exhibit 7. Voting machines were able to be connected to the internet by way of laptop that were obviously internet accessible. Voting machines were able to be connected to the internet by way of laptop that were obviously internet accessible. If one laptop was connected to the internet, the entire precinct was compromised. We discovered that at least some jurisdictions were not aware that their systems were online, said Kevin, are you serious? Skoglund, an independent security consultant who conducted the research with 9 others, all of them longtime security professionals and academics with expertise in election security, Vice, August 2019. Now, the ballot marketing device cannot ensure the will of the voter. Yeah, we know that. Critical U.S. election system has been left exposed. 2019, y'all knew about what you were doing. BDD. October 6, 2006, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney called on Secretary of Treasury Henry Paulson to conduct an investigation into Smartmatic based on its foreign ownership and ties to Venezuela. See Exhibit 24. Congresswoman Maloney wrote that it is undisputable that Smartmatic is foreign owned and has acquired Sequoia. Smartmatica, why is it different? Now acknowledged that Antonio Marguccionio, a Venezuelan businessman, has a controlling interest in Smartmatica, but the company has not revealed who all the Smartmatic owners are. Why are we changing back and forth? Dominion got into trouble with several subsidiaries it used over alleged cause of fraud. Dominion got in trouble, quotations, with several subsidiaries it used over alleged cases of fraud. There we go. One subsidiary is Smartmatic, a company that has played a significant role in the U.S. market over the last decade, according to a report published by UK-based Access Wire 23. Litigation over Smartmatic glitches alleges they impacted the 2010 and 2013 midterm elections in the Philippines. I got some of that footage too, raising questions of cheating and fraud. An independent review of the source code used in the machines found back it on up. An independent review of the source code used in the machines found multiple problems, which concluded the software inventory provided by Smartmatic is inadequate, which brings into question the software credibility. So the voting technology companies in the U.S., their histories, all right, 2017. All right, cool. H. Dominion acquired Sequoia Voting Systems as well as Premier Election Solutions, formerly part of Diebold, which sold Premier to ES&S in 2009, until antitrust issues forced ES&S to sell Premier, which then was acquired by Dominion. So where does ES&S play a role in this? Okay. Dominion entered into a 2009 contract with Smartmatic and provided Smartmatic with the PCOS machines, piece of shit machines, optical scanners that were used in the 2010 Philadelphia election, the biggest automated election run by a private company. The internal company hailed the automation of that first election. The international community hailed the automation of that first election in the Philippines. The results transmissions reached 90% of votes 4 hours after polls closed, and Filipinos knew for the first time who would be their new president on election day. In keeping with local election law requirements, Smartmatic and Dominion were required to provide the source code of the voting machines prior to elections so that it could be independently verified. Okay. In late December 2019, 3 Democrat senators, Warren Klobuchar Wyden, and the House members Mark Pokin, wrote about their particularized concerns that secretive and trouble-plagued companies have long skimped on security in favor of convenience. Klobuchar, Wyden, and Warren? Okay. In the context of how they describe the voting machine system that 3 large vendors, ES&S, Dominion Voting System, and Hart Intercivic, collectively provide voting machines and software that facilitate voting for over 90% of all eligible voters in the U.S. Wow. See attached here to Exhibit 26 copy of Senator Warren Klobuchar Wyden's December 6, 2019 letter. Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat of Oregon, said the findings insecurity of voting system are yet another damning indictment of the profiteering election vendors who care more about the bottom line than protecting our democracy. It's also an indictment, he said, of the notion that important cybersecurity decisions should be left entirely to county election offices, many of whom do not employ a single cybersecurity specialist. Cybersecurity. Come on, dude. Cybersecurity specialist. Single cybersecurity specialist. Yeah, I mean, that's important. Machines were not altered following the submission of the code. Presumably, the machines were not altered, yes, following the submission of the code. London was questioning that. That's awesome. 111. The analysis of the Dominion voting software system by a former U.S. military intelligence expert concludes that the system and software have been accessible and were certainly compromised by rogue actors such as Iran and China by using servers and employees connected with rogue actors and hostile foreign influences, combined with numerous easily discoverable leaked credentials. Dominion neglectfully allowed foreign adversaries to access data and internally provide access to their infrastructure in order to monitor and manipulate elections, including the most recent one in 2020. See Exhibit 7. Yeah, that's crazy town. All right. Cheese and crackers, man. Like, that's a big statement. An expert witness in pending litigation in the United States District Court, Northern District Court of Georgia, Atlanta Division 17-CV-02989, specifically testified to the acute security vulnerabilities, among other facts, by declaration filed on October 4th, 2020. See Exhibit 4B, document 959-4. Exclusive critical U.S. election systems have been left exposed. Online exposed officials, 2019. Okay, great. Attached here to paragraph 18 and 20 of P28, Exhibit 4, Hursty Declaration, wherein he testified or found. This is what that guy said. Hold on a second. I got coffee. Okay. What did he testify? Well, he testified that the failure of the Dominion software to meet the methods and processes for national standards for managing voting system problems and should not be accepted for use in a public election under any circumstance. Who's this guy? An expert witness pending litigation, Georgia, October 4th, all right? And Homeboy said, the failure of the Dominion software to meet the methods and processes for national standards for managing voting system problems and should not be acceptable, I think I read that wrong again, for use in public elections under, I got that part right. Don't use this, Johns. All right, in Hursty's declaration, he explains that there is evidence of remote access and remote troubleshooting, which presents a grave security implication, and certified identified vulnerabilities should be considered an extreme security risk. ID Harry Hursty also explains that USB drives with vote tally information were observed to be removed from the presence of poll watchers during a recent election. ID. The fact that there are no controls of the USB drives were seen recently seen the lack of physical security. The fact that there are no controls of the USB drives was recently seen the lack of physical security and compliance with professional standards in one Georgia county, where it is reported that 3,300 votes were found on memory sticks not loaded, plus in Floyd County, another 2,600 were unscanned, and the found votes reduced Biden's lead over Donald Trump, little 29 there. In the prior case against Dominion, Supra, further implicating the secrecy behind the software used in Dominion systems. Recount finds thousands used. Dr. Eric Coomer A vice president of Dominion Voting Systems testified that even he was not sure of what testing solutions were available to test problems or how that was done. I have got to be honest. No, you don't. No, I've got to be honest. You have proven you do not have to be honest. Ever. But we'll go with it. I have got to be honest. We might be a little bit out of my bounds of understanding the rules and regulations here, dish. And in response to a question on testifying for voting systems problems in relation to issues identified in 2 counties, he explains that, Your Honor, I'm not sure of the complete test plan, all right, dude? Again, Pro V and V themselves determine what test plan is necessary based on their analysis of the code itself, obviously. ID at document 959. Oh, man, the switcheroo. It's like watching freaking, that every single douchebag that's in front of Congress, Peter Strzok, James Comey, everybody's like, yeah, look, again, Pro V and V themselves determine what test plan is necessary. It's not me. It's them. It's always them. God, can we ever find the them? They are them. What am I talking about? Hursty stated within said declaration, the security risks outlined above, operating system risk, the failure to harden the computers performing operations directly on the operating system, lacks control of memory card, lacks procedure, and potential remote access are extreme and destroy the credibility of the tabulations and output of the reports coming from the voting system. That was a lot. Let's do it again. The security risks outlined above, operating system risks, the failure to harden the computers, performing operations directly on the operating system, lacks control of memory cards, lack of procedure, and potential remote access are extreme, and they destroy the credibility of the tabulation and output of the reports coming from the voting system. See paragraph 49 of Hursty Declaration 114. Rather than engaging in an open and transparent process to give credibility to Georgia's brand new voting system, the election processes were hidden during the receipt, review, opening, and tabulation of those votes in direct contravention of Georgia's election code and federal law. You didn't let us see nothing. The House of Representatives passed H.R. 2722 in an attempt to address these very risks identified by Hursty on June 27, 2019. This bill addresses election security through grant programs and requirements for voting systems and paper ballots. The bill establishes requirements for voting systems, including that the system, 1, uses individual, durable, voter-verified paper ballots, 2, make a voter's marked ballot available for inspection and verification by the voter before the vote is cast. 3, ensure that individuals with disabilities are given an equivalent opportunity to vote, including with privacy and independence, in a manner that produces a voter-verified paper ballot. Well, I didn't see any transgender voting booths, so we were probably good on that. Be manufactured in the United States and meet specific cybersecurity requirements, including the prohibition of the connection of a voting system to the internet. Requirements for voting systems be manufactured in the United States. Okay. How did this pass anything? Weird. Additional specific fraud. On November 4th, 2020, the Georgia GOP chairman issued the following statement. Let me repeat. Fulton County election officials told the media and our observers that they were shutting down the tabulation center at State Farm Arena at 10:30 p.m. on election night to continue counting ballots in secret till 1 a.m. Let me repeat. Fulton County election officials told the media and our observers that they were shutting down the tabulation center at State Farm Arena at 10:30 p.m. on election night to continue counting ballots in secret until 1 a.m. I swear they're saying the Fulton County election official told the media that they were going to do this. That's how I'm reading it. But it is widely reported that as of 7 p.m. on Wednesday, Fulton County election officials said 30,000 absentee ballots were not processed due to pipe burst. Officials reassured voters that none of the ballots were damaged and that the water was quickly cleaned up. But the emergency delayed officials from processing ballots between 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. or 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. Officials say they continued to count beginning at 8:30 a.m. Wednesday. The statement from Fulton County continues. Tonight, Fulton County will report results for approximately 86,000 absentee ballots as well as Election Day and early voting results. These represent the vast majority of ballots cast within Fulton County. As planned, Fulton County will continue to tabulate the remaining of absentee ballots over the next 2 days. Absentee ballot processing requires that each ballot is open, signatures verified, and ballots scanned. This is a labor-intensive process that takes longer to tabulate than any other form of voting. Fulton County did not anticipate having all absentee ballots processed on Election Day. Officials said that they will work to ensure every vote is counted and all laws and regulations are followed. Bullshit. 4,000 remaining absentee ballots. Okay, plaintiffs have learned that representation about a water leak affecting the room where absentee ballots were counted was not true. The only water leak that needed repair at State Farm Arena from November 3rd through November 5th was a toilet overflow that occurred early on November 3rd. You could do that with daggum paper towels. Freaking, okay, whatever, a leak. It had nothing to do with a room with ballot counting, but the false water break representation led to everyone being sent home. Nonetheless, for 6 people, then 3 people stayed until 1:05 a.m. working on the computer. What were they doing? An affiant recounts how she was present at State Farm Arena on November 3rd and saw election workers remaining behind after people were told to leave. See Exhibit 25, Affidavit of Mitchell Harrison. Exhibit 29, Affidavit of Michelle Branton. 120. Plaintiffs have also learned through several reports that in 2010, Eric Coomer joined Dominion as Vice President of U.S. Engineering. Vice President of U.S. Engineering. According to his bio, Coomer graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a PhD in nuclear physics. Eric Coomer was later promoted to Voting Systems Officer of Strategy and Security, although Coomer has since been removed from the Dominion page of directors. Dominion altered its website after Colorado resident Joe Altman disclosed that as a reporter, he infiltrated Antifa, a domestic terrorist organization where he recorded Eric Coomer representing, "Don't worry, Trump won't win the election. We fixed that," as well as social media posts with violence threatened against President Trump. See Joe Altman interview with Michelle Malkin, dated November 13th, 2020, which contains copies of Eric Coomer's recording and tweets. Are you joking? Are you kidding me? While the bedrock of American elections has been transparency, almost every crucial aspect of Georgia's November 3, 2020 general election was shrouded in secrecy, rife with errors, and permeated with anomalies so egregious as to render the results incapable of certification. Yeah, you can't certify that junk. Multiple expert reports and statistical analysis prove hundreds of thousands of votes were lost or shifted that cost President Trump and the Republican candidates of Congressional District 6 and 7 their races. Okay, what you got here? As evidenced by numerous public reports, expert reports, and witness statements, defendants' egregious misconduct has included ignoring legislative mandates concerning mail-in and ordinary ballots and led to disenfranchisement of an enormous number of Georgia voters. Plaintiffs' experts can show that consistent with the above specific misrepresentations, analysis of voting data reveals the following. Okay, so including all of that, here are the numbers. Regarding uncounted mail ballots, based on evidence gathered by Matt Brainerd in the form of recorded calls and declarations of voters and analyzed by plaintiff's expert William M. Briggs, PhD, shows, based on a statistically significant sample, that the total number of mail ballots that voters mailed in but were never counted have a 95% likelihood of falling between 31,559 and 38,886 total lost votes. This range exceeds the margin of loss of President Trump of 12,670 votes by at least 18,889 lost votes, and by as many as 26,196 lost votes. You should see that Exhibit 1 of Dr. Briggs's report with the old attachment. Plaintiff's expert also finds that voters received tens of thousands of ballots that they never requested. See Exhibit 1. Specifically, Dr. Briggs found that in the state of Georgia, based on the statistically significant sample, the expected amount of persons that received an absentee ballot that they did not request ranged from 16,938 to 22,771. Another glitch. This range exceeds the margin of loss of President Trump by 12,670 votes by at least 4,268 requests and by as many as 10,101 unlawful requests. Like they didn't request it and they got it anyway. Okay. Or they didn't request it and one was made for them. I don't know how that works. Hold on. This widespread pattern, as reflected within the population of unreturned ballots analyzed by Dr. Briggs, reveals the unavoidable reality that in addition to the calculations herein, third parties voted an untold number of unlawfully acquired absentee or mail-in ballots, which would not be in the database, or unreturned ballots analyzed here. I know they're going to probably explain it, but the widespread pattern as reflected within the population of unreturned ballots analyzed by Dr. Briggs reveals the unavoidable reality that, in addition to the calculations herein, third parties voted an untold number of unlawfully acquired absentee or mail-in ballots, which would not be in the database of unreturned ballots analyzed here. See OG 212522. These unlawfully voted ballots prohibited properly registered persons from voting and reveal a pattern of widespread fraud down ballot as well. Oh, look at that. Okay. So now we're going down ballot. They didn't get the vote, and down ballot, douche. All right. Further, as calculated by Matt Brainerd, who unfortunately, his wife was like, "We're not going on vacation, are we?" And he's all like, "Nah, dude, I tried to tell people about this." Really cool story about Matt. Bald dude. I hope I'm thinking about the right guy. I need more coffee. Further, as calculated by Matt Brainerd, there exists clear evidence of 20,311 absentee or early voters in Georgia that voted while registered as having moved out of the state. Oh, nice. See ID attachment. Oh, that's it right there. Dude, done. Specifically, these persons were showing on the National Change of Address Database, NCOA, as having moved or as having filed subsequent voter registration in another state, also as evidence that they moved and even potentially voted in another state. The 20,311 votes by persons documented as having moved exceeds the margin by which Donald Trump lost the election by 7,641 votes. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Applying pro rata, I love applying pro rata, it's delicious. Applying pro rata, the above calculations separately to Cobb County based on the number of unreturned ballots, a range of 1,255 to 1,687 ballots ordered by third parties, and a range of 2,338 and 2,897 lost ballots, plus 10,684 voters documented in the NCOA as having moved, for a combined minimum of 14,276 missing and unlawful ballots, and maximum of 15,250 missing and unlawful ballots, which totally exceeds the statewide presidential race total margin by a range of as few as 1,606 ballots and as many as 2,580 in the county of Cobb alone, impacting the Cobb County Republican Party. Cobb County Republicans. Cheese and crackers, he wins it with one county alone. That's nutty. As seen from the expert analysis of Eric Quinnell, mathematical anomalies further support these findings. When in various districts within Fulton County, such as vote gains that exceed reasonable expectation when compared to 2016, and a failure of gains to be normally distributed, but instead shifting subsequently towards the tail of the distribution in what is known as platycurtic distribution. All right. Dr. Quinnell identifies numerous anomalies, such as votes to Biden in excess of 2016 exceed the registrations that are in excess of 2016. Dr. Quinnell identifies numerous anomalies, such as votes to Biden in excess of 2016 exceed the registrations that are in excess of 2016. I don't know. Ultimately, he identifies the counties in order of their excess performance over what would have fit in a normal distribution of voting gains, revealing a list of the most anomalous counties down to the least. These various anomalies provide evidence of voting irregularities. You should see the old Exhibit 27 declaration of Eric Quinnell with attachment. 124. In sum, the expert analysis of William M. Briggs, Ph.D., based on recorded calls and declarations to extend and missing and unlawful, big ol' and, capital A-N-D, and unlawfully requested ballots created substantial evidence that the mail ballot system has fundamentally failed to provide a fair voting mechanism. In short, tens of thousands of votes did not count, while the pattern of fraud makes clear that tens of thousands were improperly counted. This margin of victory in the election for Mr. Biden was only 12,670 and cannot withstand most of these criticisms individually and certainly not in aggregate. No, one county kills you. 125 Cobb County, based on lost votes, unlawfully requested votes, and NCOA data on these facts alone would consume more than the entire margin of the statewide difference in the presidential race. These election results must be reversed. Ooh, let's apply some pro rata again. Applying pro rata, the above calculations separately to Cobb County based on the number of unreturned ballots, a range of 1,255 and 1,687 ballots ordered by third parties, and range of 2,338 and 2,897 lost mail ballots, plus 10,684 voters documented in the NCOA as having moved, for a combined minimum of 14,250 276 missing and unlawful ballots, and a maximum of 15,250 missing and unlawful ballots, which exceeds the statewide presidential race total margin by a range of as few as 1,606 ballots and as many as 2,580 in the county of Cobb alone, impacting the Cobb County Republican Party. Cobb County Republicans. Let's see Exhibit 1. There's got to be a reason I'm rereading things. They probably serve two purposes or something. I don't know. How can we not have these folks every which way from Wednesday? Mr. Brainerd also found a pattern in Georgia of voters registered at a totally different one? Holy cow. Mr. Brainerd also found a pattern in Georgia of voters registered at totally fraudulent resident addresses, including shopping centers, mail drop stores, and other non-residential facilities. That 34 we got to look at because somebody said that there's an exception for something. In sum, with the expert analysis of William M. Briggs, Ph.D., based on the extensive investigation, recorded calls, and declarations collected by Matt Brainerd, see attachment Exhibit 1, Briggs Report, the extent of missing and unlawfully requested ballots create substantial evidence that the mail ballot system has fundamentally failed to provide a fair voting mechanism. And, yeah, Matt Brainerd and all that good stuff, yep. In short, tens of thousands of votes did not count, while the pattern of fraud and mathematical anomalies that are impossible absent malign human agency I like that. Tens of thousands of votes did not count, while the pattern of fraud and mathematical anomalies that are impossible absent malign human agency make clear that tens of thousands were improperly counted. This margin of victory in the election for Mr. Biden was only 12,670 and cannot withstand most of the criticisms individually and certainly not in aggregate. Cobb County, based on lost votes, unlawfully requested votes, and NCOA data on these facts alone, would consume more than the entire margin of the statewide difference in the presidential race. Russell Ramslin confirms that data breaches in the Dominion software permitted rogue actors to penetrate and manipulate the software during the recent general election. He further concludes that at least 96,600 mail-in ballots were illegally counted as they were not cast by legal voters. That's a lot of votes. In sum, as set forth above, for a host of independent reasons, the Georgia certified election results concluding that Joe Biden received 12,670 more votes than President Donald Trump must be set aside. You got to ditch that junk. Count 1. Okay, I need to get a drink before this junk. Oh, I should pause it. Is there a pause? Yes. All right, count 1. Defendants violated the election clause of 42 USC squiggly line 1983. 132. Plaintiffs reallege all preceding paragraphs as is fully set forth herein. Okay. 133. The electors clause states that small e each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature therefore or thereof may direct a number of electors for president. Art 2 squiggly line 1 CL2 emphasis added. Where'd you add the emphasis? If you didn't, let's see where you. The electors clause states that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors for president. Legislature, therefore, may direct. Okay. Likewise, the election clause of the U.S. Constitution states that the times, place, and manner of holding elections for senator and representative shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Maybe it's Article 1, squiggly line 4, John Cleese 1, emphasis added. Where would you... Okay. Probably in the same place you did before. Okay. 134, the legislature is the representative body which makes the laws of the people. Please, yes. Smiley 285 U.S. at 193, regulations of congressional and presidential elections thus must be in accordance with the method which the state has prescribed for legislative enactments. ID at 367. See also our state legislature versus our independent, Arizona independent regis. Blah, blah, blah. Douche. We read that. Defendants, those douchebags, are not part of the General Assembly and cannot exercise legislative power. Rather, defendants' power is limited to taking care of the laws be faithfully executed. Taking care that the laws be faithfully executed. PA Constitution, Article 4, squiggly line 2. Because the United States Constitution reserves for the General Assembly the power to set the time, place, and manner of holding elections for the President and Congress, county boards of election and state executive officers have no authority to unilaterally have no authority to unilaterally exercise that power. Yeah, without you. Much less to hold them in ways that conflict with existing legislature. Yeah, you can't do that. Defendants are not the legislature, and their unilateral decision to create a cure procedure violates the Electors and Elections Clause of the United States Constitution. Cure procedure. I remember that now. The Secretary of State and the State Election Board are not the legislature, and their decision to permit early processing of absentee ballots in direct violation of the unambiguous requirement of OG squiggly line 21-2-386A2 violates the Electors and Elections Clause of the United States Constitution. Yeah, we remember that. Many affiants testified to many legal infractions in the voting process, including specifically switching absentee ballots or mail-in ballots for Trump to Biden. Even a Democrat testified in his sworn affidavit that before he was forced to move back to where he could not see, he had in fact seen, I also saw, absentee ballots for Trump inserted into Biden's stack and counted as Biden votes. This occurred a few times. See Exhibit 18, paragraph 12, 139. Plaintiff's expert also finds that voters received tens of thousands of ballots that they never requested. See Exhibit 1, Dr. Briggs' report. Specifically, Dr. Briggs found that in the state of Georgia, based on a statistically significant sample, the expected amount of persons that received an absentee ballot that they did not request one ranges from 16,938 to 22,771. This range exceeds the margin of loss of President Trump by 12,670 votes by at least 4,268 unlawful requests and by as many as 10,101 unlawful requests. This widespread pattern, as reflected within the population of unreturned ballots analyzed by Dr. Briggs, reveals the unavoidable reality that, in addition to the calculations herein, third parties voted an untold number of unlawfully acquired absentee or mail-in ballots, which would not be in the database of unreturned ballots analyzed here. COG 21-522. These unlawfully voted ballots prohibited properly registered persons from voting and revealed a pattern of widespread fraud. Yeah, that's pretty big if it overturns an election. 141. Further, as shown by data collected by Matt Brainerd, there exists clear evidence of 20,311 absentee or early voters in Georgia that voted while registered as having moved out of state. Specifically, these persons were showing on the National Change of Address database as having moved or as having filed subsequent voter registration in another state, also as evidence that they moved and even potentially voted in those other states. The 20,311 votes by persons documented as having moved exceeds the margin by which Donald Trump lost the election by 7,641 votes. Every which way we got you. Oh, there's only count one. Plaintiffs have no adequate remedy at law and will suffer serious and irreparable harm unless the injunctive relief requested herein is granted. Defendants have acted and, unless enjoined, will act under color of state law to violate the election clauses of the Constitution according to the results for President and Congress in the November 3rd, 2020 election must be set aside. The results are infected with constitutional violation. The results are infected with constitutional violations. I like that part. They are infected with it. Little virus talk. Virus talk. It's funny how some things about talking about the virus seem to be talking about the election. It's weird, but probably nothing. Count two. The Secretary of State and Georgia counties violated the 14th Amendment, U.S. Constitution Amendment 1442, USC squiggly line 1983, denial of equal protection, invalid enactment of regulations affecting observation and monitoring of the election. Yeah, you did. 143. Plaintiffs refer to and incorporate by reference each of the prior paragraphs of this complaint as though the same were repeated at length herein. Yeah, you are repeating it at length. That's interesting. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution provides, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. See also Bush versus Gore, 531 U.S. 98 104 2000. Having once granted the right to vote on equal terms, the state may not, by later arbitrary or disparate treatment, disparaging, I guess, treatment, value one person's vote over the value of another's. Harper versus Virginia Board of Election. Harper versus, there's more stuff in there. 383 U.S. 663 665 1966. Once the franchise is granted to the electorate, lines may not be drawn which are inconsistent with the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. All right. The court has held that to ensure equal protection, a problem inheres in the absence of specific standards to ensure its equal application. Problems inheres in the absence. Problems arise, I guess, in the absence of specific standards to ensure its equal application. The formulation of uniform rules to determine intent based on these recurring circumstances is practicable and we conclude necessary. All right, equal footing. Okay, that's Bush versus Gore, 531 U.S. 98 106 3 douche. The equal enforcement of election laws is necessary to preserve our most basic and fundamental rights. The requirement of equal protection is particularly stringently enforced as the laws that affect the exercise of fundamental rights, including the right to vote. Let's do it again. It sounded important. Stringently. The equal enforcement of election laws is necessary to preserve our most basic and fundamental rights. The equal enforcement of election laws is necessary to preserve our most basic and fundamental rights. Oh, okay, I get it. The requirement of equal protection is particularly stringently enforced as to laws that affect the exercise of fundamental rights, including the right to vote. Okay, I get it. In statewide and federal elections conducted in the state of Georgia, including without limitation the November 3rd, 2020 general election, all candidates, political parties, and voters, including without limitation plaintiffs, have a vested interest in being presented and having meaningful access to observe and monitor the electoral process in each county to ensure that it properly administered in every election district and otherwise free, fair, and transparent. Okay, odd. Let's do it again. In statewide and federal elections conducted in the state of Georgia, including without limitation the November 3rd, 2020 general election, all candidates, political parties, and voters, including without limitation plaintiffs, have a vested interest in being presented and having meaningful access to observe and monitor the election process in each county to ensure that it is properly administered in every election district and otherwise free, fair, and transparent. We have that right, okay? Moreover, through its provisions involving watchers and representatives, the Georgia Election Code ensures that all candidates and political parties in each county, including the Trump campaign, have meaningful access to observe and monitor the electoral process to ensure that it is properly administered in every election district and otherwise free and fair and transparent. See example. See example what? Oh, see example. In plain terms, the statute clearly prohibits opening absentee ballots prior to Election Day, while the rule authorizes doing so 3 weeks before Election Day. There is no reconciling this conflict. The State Election Board has authority under OG squiggly line 21-2-31 to adopt lawful and legal rules and regulations, but no authority to promulgate a regulation that is directly contrary to an unambiguous statute. That's super clear, but one more time is good. There is no let's do it there. In plain terms. Plain terms, right. Take a drink first, because this is such a good one. Because it's all bad at this. Everything's kind of like fruit of the poisonous tree after this. It's like, y'all can't make the rules, dude. In plain terms, the statute clearly prohibits opening absentee ballots prior to Election Day, while the rule authorizes doing so 3 weeks before Election Day. There is no reconciling this conflict. The State Election Board has authority under OG squiggly line 21-2-31 to adopt lawful and legal rules and regulations, but it's got no authority to promulgate a regulation that is directly contrary to an unambiguous statute. Rule 183-1-14-0-915 is therefore plainly and indisputably unlawful. So the rule that they made is therefore plainly and indisputably, no dispute, it's unlawful. Plaintiffs also bring this action under Georgia law OG squiggly line 21-2-522 grounds for contest. A. Results of a primary or election may be contested on one or more of these following grounds. Y'all are a bunch of big cheats. One, misconduct, fraud, and irregularity by any primary or election officer or officials, election officials or officials sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. All right, we got that one. When the defendant is ineligible for the nomination or office in dispute. We got that one. When illegal votes have been received or legal votes rejected at the polls sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. We got that one. For any error in counting the votes or declaring the results of the primary or election, if such error would change the result, or for any error in counting the votes or declaring the results of the primary or election in such error, if such error would change the result. Well, I mean, I don't get it, kind of. For any other cause which shows that another was the person. Oh, yeah, that's right. For any other cause which shows that another was the person legally nominated, elected, or eligible to compete in a runoff primary. Hold on a second. For any other cause which shows that another, maybe Kamala Harris, was the person legally nominated, elected, or eligible to compete in a runoff primary or election. OG squiggly line 21-2-522. Interesting. I don't know. 151. Several affiants testified to the improper procedure with absentee ballot processing, with the lack of auditable procedures, with the logs in the computer system, which violates Georgia law and federal election law to boot. See also 50 U.S.C. squiggly line 20701 requires the retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections under penalty of fine and imprisonment. Send them to jail. The State Election Board readopted Rule on November 23, 2020 for the upcoming January 2021 runoff election. A large number of ballots were identical and likely fraudulent. An affiant explains that she observed a batch of utterly pristine ballots. Let's talk about that. Most of the ballots had already been handled. They had been written on by people and the edges were torn. They showed obvious use. However, one batch stood out. It was pristine. There was a difference in the texture of the paper. It was as if they were intended for absentee use, but had not been used for that purpose. There was a difference in the feel. Well, these different ballots included a slight depressed pre-fold, so they could be easily folded and unfolded for use in the scanning machine. There were no markings on the ballots to show where they'd come from or where they had been processed. These stood out. In my 20 years of experience of handling ballots, I observed that the marking for the candidates on those ballots were unusually uniform, perhaps even with a ballot marking device. By my estimates, in observing these ballots, approximately 98% constituted votes for Joe Biden. I only observed 2 of these ballots as votes for President Donald J. Trump. You should see Exhibit 15. I put it all in there. 154, the same affiant further testified specifically to the breach of the chain of custody of the voting machines the night before the elections, stating, we typically receive the machines, the ballot marking devices, on the Friday before the election, with a chain of custody letter to sign on Sunday, indicating that we had received the machines and the count on the machines was received and the machines had been sealed. What did you do? Well, we typically receive the machines, the ballot marking devices, on the Friday before the election, with a chain of custody letter to be signed on Sunday, indicating that we had received the machines and that the count on the machines when received and that the machines have been sealed. Okay. In this case, we were asked to sign the chain of custody letter on Sunday, even though the machines were not delivered until 2 a.m. in the morning on Election Day. 2 a.m. I thought it said something different on the last one. The Milton precinct received its machines at 1 a.m. in the morning on Election Day. This is unacceptable, and voting machines should not be out of custody prior to an Election Day ID. 155. Defendants have a duty to treat the voting citizens in each county in the same manner as the citizens in other counties in Georgia. As set forth in count 1 above, defendants failed to comply with the requirements of the Georgia Election Code and thereby diluted the lawful ballots of the plaintiffs and of other Georgia voters and electors in violation of the United States Constitution, guaranteeing guarantee of equal protection. 157. Specifically, defendants denied the plaintiffs equal protection of the law and their equal rights to meaningful access to observe and monitor the electoral process enjoyed by citizens in other Georgia counties by mandating that representatives at the pre-canvass and canvass of all absentee and mail-in ballots be either Georgia barred attorneys or qualified registered electors of the county in which they sought to observe the monitor. Ooh, a little disenfranchisement there. You can't do that. You can't qualify them. Not allowing watchers and representatives to visibly see and review all envelopes containing official absentee and mail-in ballots either at or before they were opened and or when such ballots were counted and recorded, and allowing the use of Dominion Democracy Suite software and devices which failed to meet the Dominion certification report's condition for certification. Instead, defendants refused to credential all of the Trump Republicans submitted watchers and representatives and or kept Trump campaigns watchers and representatives by security and metal barricades from the areas where the inspection, opening, and counting of absentee and mail-in ballots were taking place. Consequently, defendants created a system whereby it was physically impossible for the candidates and political parties to view the ballots and verify that illegally cast ballots were not opened and counted. Y'all didn't let us say it. 159, many affiants testified to switching absentee ballots or mail-in ballots from Trump to Biden, including a Democrat. He testified in his sworn affidavit that before he was forced to move back to where he could not see, he had in fact seen absentee ballots for Trump inserted into Biden stacks and counted as Biden votes. This occurred a few times. See Exhibit 18, paragraph 12. 160. Other Georgia County boards of election provided watchers and representatives of candidates and political parties, including without limitation watchers and representatives of the Republicans and the Trump campaign, with appropriate access to view the absentee and mail-in ballots being pre-canvassed and canvassed by those county election boards and without restricting representatives by any county residency or Georgia bar license requirements. I don't think I got that one. Other Georgia county boards of elections provided watchers and representatives of candidates and political parties, including without limitation to yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I mean, okay, more disenfranchisement, I get it. Defendants initially and or arbitrarily and capriciously denied plaintiffs access to and or obstructed actual observation and monitoring of the absentee and mail-in ballots being pre-canvassed and canvassed by defendants, depriving them of the equal protection of those state laws enjoyed by citizens in other counties. Defendants have acted and will continue to act under color of state law to violate plaintiffs' rights to be present and have actual observation and access to the electoral process as secured by the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. Defendants further violated Georgia's voters' rights to equal protection insofar as defendants allowed the Georgia counties to process and count ballots in a manner that allowed ineligible ballots to be counted, and through the use of the Dominion Democracy Suites, allowed eligible ballots for Trump and McCormick to be switched to Biden or lost altogether. Defendants thus failed to conduct the general election in a uniform manner as required by the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and the Georgia Election Code. Plaintiffs seek declaratory and injunctive relief, holding that the election under these circumstances was improperly certified and that the governor be enjoined from transmitting Georgia's certified presidential election results to the Electoral College. Georgia law forbids certifying a tally that includes any ballots that were not legally cast and that were switched from Trump to Biden through the unlawful use of Dominion Democracy Suite's software and devices. Y'all can't do that. Alternatively, plaintiffs seek declaratory and injunctive relief, holding that the election, under these circumstances, was improperly certified and that the governor be required to recertify the results, declaring that Donald Trump has won the election and transmitting Georgia's certified presidential election results in favor of Donald Trump. You should totally do that. Plaintiffs have no adequate remedy at law and will suffer serious and irreparable harm unless the declaratory and injunctive relief requested herein is granted. Indeed, the setting aside of an election in which the people have chosen their representative is a drastic remedy that should not be undertaken lightly, but instead should be reserved for cases in which a person challenging an election has clearly established a violation of election procedure and has demonstrated that the violation has placed the results of the election in doubt. Georgia law allows elections to be contested through litigation, both as a check on the integrity of the election process and as a means of ensuring the fundamental rights of citizens to vote and to have their votes counted accurately. That's OG squiggly line 21-2-520 et s with 167. In addition to the alternative request for relief in the preceding paragraphs, hereby restated, plaintiffs seek a permanent injunction requiring the county election board to invalidate ballots cast by 1. Voters whose signature on the registrations have not been matched with ballot, envelope, and voter registration check. 2. All dead votes. And 4. All 900 military ballots in Fulton County that supposedly were 100% for Joe Biden. You're missing a 3, I think. All right. Count 3. 14 Amendments, Equal Protection Clause, U.S. Constitution Amendment 1442, U.S.C. squiggly line 1983. Denial of due process, disparate treatment of absentee mail-in voters among different counties. Ooh, take a drink. Light a smoke. Come on, Sidney Powell, protect our votes. Plaintiffs incorporate. Plaintiffs incorporate each of the prior allegations in this complaint. Incorporate. I don't know what that means. Voting is a fundamental right protected by the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. The 14th Amendment protects the right to vote from conduct by state officials which seriously undermines the fundamental fairness of the electoral process. Marks v. Stinton, 19 F3D 873 889 3D something 94 Griffin douche. He's going to say something. Having once granted the right to vote on equal terms, the state may not, by later arbitrary and disparate treatment, having once granted the right to vote on equal terms, yes, the state may not, by later arbitrary or disparate treatment, value one person's vote over that of another. Bush 53 douche. Defendants are not part of the General Assembly and cannot exercise legislative power. Rather, defendants' power is limited to executing the laws as passed by the legislature. Although the Georgia General Assembly may enact laws governing the conduct of elections, no legislative enactment may contravene the requirements of the Georgia or United States Constitution. That's all like shaky 257A, 2D, 288, 98, 170. Federal courts possess board discretion to fashion an equitable remedy. All right, so federal courts possess board discretion to fashion an equitable remedy. Black Warrior Riverkeeper Inc. versus U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, 781F3D 127, 11th Circuit, Castle versus somebody, douche, douche, douche. Oh man, it's totally starting to rain now. The decision whether to grant equitable relief, and if granted, what form it shall take, lies in the discretion of the district court. Okay, so y'all can just handle this. Moreover, to the extent that a voter is at risk for having his or her ballot rejected due to minor errors made in contravention of those requirements, the decision to provide a notice and opportunity to cure procedure to alleviate the risk is one best suited for the legislature, particularly in light of the open policy questions attendant to that decision. Including what the precise contours of the procedure would be, how the consummate burdens would be addressed, and how the procedure would impact the confidentiality and counting of ballots, all of which are best left to the legislative branch of Georgia's government. Yeah, they should be doing it like the law says. The disparaging treatment of Georgia voters in subjecting one class of voters to greater burdens or scrutiny than another violates equal protection guarantees, because the right of suffrage can be denied by a debasement or delusion of the weight of a citizen's vote just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. That was Burt Reynolds, 3377 U.S. Well, that's a whole lot of stuff, and I don't even know what that is. That's like a G note or something. I don't know. Defendants are not the legislature, and therefore, this is 173. Defendants are not the legislature, and their unilateral decision to create and implement a cure procedure for some, but not all, absentee and mail-in voters in the state violates the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution. Plaintiffs have no adequate remedy at law and will suffer serious and irreparable harm unless the injunctive relief requested herein is granted. Well, it's like a domino effect. Anyway. Count 4. 14th Amendment U.S. Constitution, douche, douche, douche. Denial of due process on the right to vote, 174. Plaintiffs refer to and incorporate by reference each of the prior paragraphs of this complaint as though the same were repeated at length herein. I don't get that part, but I think they're just saying, like, I said this before. But there's all sorts of little gems wrapped in the I said this before parts. Like the 900 votes for that were straight Biden that were military votes. That's kind of a little like, what? The right of qualified citizens to vote in a state election involving federal candidates is recognized as a fundamental right under the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, Harper 383 U.S. See also Burt Reynolds 377 USS at 554. The 14th Amendment protects the right of all qualified citizens to vote in state as well as in federal elections. Indeed, ever since the Slaughterhouse case, 83 U.S. 36, 1873, the United States Supreme Court has held that the privileges or immunities clause of the 14th Amendment protects certain rights of federal citizenship from state interference, including the right of citizens to directly elect members of Congress. You can't interfere in that. See something versus Jersey. citing Ex parte Yarborough. See also Oregon versus Mitchell. Do you do the Ex parte Yarborough? Collecting cases. Okay. 176. The fundamental right to vote, protected by the 14th Amendment, is cherished in our nation because it is preservative. Yep. It it okay. It is preservative of other basic civil and political rights. So what is that? The fundamental right to vote, protected by the 14th Amendment, is cherished in our nation because it is preservative of other basic civil and political rights. Burt Reynolds, 377 U.S. at 562. Voters have a right to cast a ballot in an election free from taint. Free from the taint. I agree. Okay, wait. Voters have a right to cast a ballot in an election free from the taint of intimidation and fraud. Dude, it's freaking late, and of course I'm laughing at that. What is that? Well, that's the taint of intimidation and fraud. Run away. Burson v. Freeman, 504 U.S. 191-211, 1992. The taint of intimidation and fraud. All right, got to get past that. And confidence in the integrity of our electoral process is essential to the functioning of our, participatory democracy. Purcell versus Gonzalez, 549 U.S. 14206 per something. Korean. The taint. Obviously, included within the rights to vote, secured by the Constitution, is the right of qualified voters within a state to cast their ballots and have them counted, if they are validly cast, I might add. United States versus Classic 313 U.S. 299 315 1941. The right to... Oh, I see what they're doing. They're going to this is where they said that. All right. The right to have the vote counted means counted at full value without delusion or discount. Oh, that fractional voting kind of falls in there. Burt Reynolds, 377 U.S. at 555 N29, quoting South versus Peter, 399, Douglas, dissenting. 178, every voter in a federal election, whether he votes for a candidate with little chance of winning or for one with little chance of losing, has a right under the Constitution to have his vote fairly counted without its being distorted by fraudulently cast votes. Ooh, I see. You can't douche my vote because you did your fraud vote. Because if you do a fraud vote, that cancels out my vote. Got it. Anderson versus United States, 417 U.S. 211227, 1974. See also Baker versus Carr, 369 U.S. 186208, 1962. Invalid or fraudulent votes debase, that's the word, and dilute the weight of each validly cast vote. See Anderson, 417 U.S. at 277. The right to an honest count is a right possessed by each voting elector, and to extend that the importance of his vote is nullified to the extent. Got it. The right to an honest count is a right possessed by each voting elector, and to the extent that the importance of his or her vote is nullified, wholly or in part, he has been injured in the free exercise of a right or privilege secured to him by the laws and Constitution of the United States. Anderson, I think, said that in 417 U.S. 226, quoting Pritchard versus United States, due to absence of decorum. Don't know what that means. Practices that promote the casting of illegal and unreliable ballots or failing to contain basic minimum guarantees against such conduct can violate the 14th Amendment by leading to the delusion of validly cast ballots. See Burt Reynolds 377 U.S. at 555. The right of suffrage can be denied by a debasement or delusion of the weight of a citizen's vote just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. Yeah, man, you add one, you take the other one away, it's like you didn't even vote. In Georgia, the signature verification requirement is a dead letter. I don't know what that means. The signature rejection rate for the most recent election announced by the Secretary of State was 0.15%. The signature rejection rate for absentee ballot applications was 0.00167%, only 30 statewide. Only 30 ballots statewide were rejected because of signature? Holy cow, guys, you didn't even try to cover this up. Hancock County, Georgia, population 8,348, rejected 9 absentee ballot applications for signature mismatch. Fulton County rejected 8. No other metropolitan county in Georgia rejected even a single absentee ballot application for signature mismatch. The state of Colorado, which has run voting by mail for a number of years, has a signature rejection rate of between 0.52% and 0.66%. Or maybe that's just, 0.66%. The state of Oregon had a rejection rate of 0.86% in 2016. The state of Washington had a rejection rate of between 1% and 2%. If Georgia rejection absentee ballot at a rate of 0.52 instead of the actual 0.15%, approximately 4,600 more absentee ballots would have been rejected. If Georgia rejected absentee ballots at a rate of 0.52% instead of the actual 0.15%, approximately 4,600 more absentee ballots would have been rejected, just kind of based on the norms. There was widespread ballot fraud, totally. OG 21-2-522182. Okay, lots of ballot fraud. Plaintiffs are referred to and incorporate by reference each of the prior paragraphs to this complaint as though the same are repeated at length herein. DuckDuckGo, signature rejection, Vox, Salon. Ugh, I mean, all right, if you have to. Plaintiffs contest the results of the Georgia's election with standing conferred under pursuant of OG 21-2-521. Therefore, pursuant to OG 21-2-522, for misconduct, fraud, and irregularity by any primary or election official or officials sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. Therefore, pursuant to OG 21-2-522, for misconduct, fraud, or irregularity by any primary or election official or official sufficient to change or place in doubt the result. The fundamental principle that Georgia law nonetheless allows elections to be contested through litigation, both as check on the integrity of the election process and as means of ensuring the fundamental right of citizens to vote and to have their vote counted accurately. That's Martin versus Fulton County, something. The Georgia Supreme Court has made clear that the plaintiffs need not show how the voters would have voted if their absentee ballots had been regular, only had to show that there were enough irregular ballots to place in doubt the result. See OG squiggly line 21-2-522, Meade, Sheffield, 1994. The Supreme Court invalidated an election and ordered a new election because it found, Thus, it was not incumbent upon the plaintiff to show how the 481 voters would have voted if their absentee ballots had been regular. He only had to show that there were enough irregular ballots to place in doubt the result. He succeeded in that task, ID 271, citing Howe versus Fear and all that stuff, 2002. Primary results invalid were ballot in one precinct omitted names of both qualified candidates. Okay, primary results invalid were ballot invalid where ballot in one precinct, okay, omitted names of both qualified candidates. Oh, haha, whoops. The glitches in the Dominion system that seem to have the uniform effect of hurting Trump and helping Biden have been widely reported in the press and confirmed by the analysis of independent experts. Prima facie? Yeah, it's prima facie to me. Prima facie evidence in multiple affidavits shows specific fraudulent acts which directly result in the flipping of the race at issue. Votes being switched in Biden's favor away from Trump during the recount, the lack of procedures in place to follow the election code, and the purchase and use Dominion voting Dominion voting system despite evidence of serious vulnerabilities. A demonstration that misrepresentations were made about a pipe burst that sent everyone home, while first 6, then 3 unknown individuals were left alone until the morning hours working on the machines. Weird. Further, a failure to demonstrate compliance with Georgia's election code in manipulating logs on the voting system for a genuine and sound audit, other than vocabulary editable logs that prevent genuine audits. Failure to demonstrate compliance with Georgia's election codes in manipulating logs on the voting system for a genuine and sound audit, other than voluntary editable logs that prevent genuine audits. Okay, maintaining logs on the voting system other than voluntary editable logs that prevent genuine. There's something in there. Failure to demonstrate compliance with Georgia's election code in maintaining logs on the voting system for a genuine and sound audit, other than voluntary editable logs that prevent genuine. You're not going to get anything concrete, but you're going to get something that we can edit, and I don't make it concrete. While the bedrock of this democratic republic rests on citizens' confidence in the validity of our elections and a transparent process, Georgia's November 3rd, 2020 general election remains under a pall of corruption and irregularity that reflects a pattern of the absence of mistake. They did it on purpose. At best, the evidence so far shows ignorance of the truth. At worst, it proves a knowing intent to defraud. Yeah, you did. Plaintiff's expert also find the voters received tens of thousands of ballots that they never requested. See Exhibit 1, Dr. Briggs' report. Specifically, Dr. Briggs found that in the state of Georgia, based on statistically significant sample, the expected amount of persons that received an absentee ballot that they did not request ranges from 16,938 to 22,771. This range exceeds the margin of loss of President Trump by 12,670 votes by at least 4,268 unlawful requested and by as many as 10,101 unlawful requested. Unlawful requests. This widespread pattern, as reflected within the population of unreturned ballots analyzed by Dr. Briggs, reveals the unavoidable reality that, in addition to the calculations herein, third parties voted an untold number of unlawfully acquired absentee or mail-in ballots, which would not be in the database of unreturned ballots analyzed here. See OG 21-2-522. These unlawfully voted ballots prohibited properly registered persons from voting and revealed a pattern of widespread fraud. Further, there exists clear evidence of 20,311 absentee or early voters in Georgia that voted while registered as having moved out of state. Specifically, these persons are showing on the National Change of Address database as having moved. and as having filed subsequent voter registration in another state also as evidence that they moved and even potentially voted in that other state. That's kind of big time because it doesn't matter if it's that state or the other state. One of those states is totally douched. The 20,311 votes by persons documented as having moved exceeds the margin by which Donald Trump lost the election by 7,641 votes. Plaintiffs expert Russell Ramslin concluded that at least 96,600 mail-in ballots were fraudulently cast. Wow. He further concludes that up to 136,098 ballots were illegally counted as a result of improper manipulation of the Dominion Dominion software. Lamb's douche affidavit. The very existence of absentee mail-in ballots created a heightened opportunity for fraud. The population of unreturned ballots analyzed by William Briggs, Ph.D., reveals the probability that a far greater number of mail-in ballots were requested by third parties or sent erroneously to persons and voted fraudulently, undetected by a failed system of signature verification. The recipients may have voted in the name of another person, may have not had the legal right to vote and voted anyway, or may have not received the ballot at the proper address and then found that they were unable to vote at the polls except provisionally due to a ballot outstanding in their name. That's a lot doing. The recipients may have voted in the name of another person, okay, may have not had the legal right to vote and voted anyway, all right, or may have not received the ballot at the proper address and then found that they were unable to vote at the polls except provisionally due to a ballot outstanding in their name. Well, that's two ballots then. They can use both of them. Weird. When we consider the harm of these uncounted ballots and ballots not ordered by the voters themselves, and the potential that many of these unordered ballots may in fact have been improperly voted and also prevented proper voting at the polls, the mail ballot system has clearly failed in the state of Georgia, and did so on a large scale and widespread basis. The size of the voting failure, whether accidental or intentional, are multiples larger than the margin of votes between the presidential candidates in the state. For these reasons, Georgia cannot reasonably rely on the results of the mail vote. 193. The right to vote includes not just the right to cast a ballot, but also the right to have it fairly counted if it is a legal ballot, if it's legally cast. The right to vote is infringed if a vote is canceled or diluted by a fraudulent or illegal vote, including without limitation when a single person votes multiple times. The Supreme Court of the United States has made it clear in case after case. See example Gary versus Sanders, 372 U.S. douche. Every vote must be protected from the diluting effect of illegal ballots. Crawford, Marion, 2008. There is no question about the legitimacy or importance of the state's interest in counting only the votes of eligible voters, according to Burt Reynolds versus Sims 377, 1964. 194. Plaintiffs have no adequate remedy at law, as seen from the expert analysis of William Higgs, Ph.D., based on actual voter data. Tens of thousands of votes did not count, and tens of thousands of votes were unlawfully requested. 195. The 14th Amendment Due Process Clause protects the rights to vote from conduct by state officials which seriously undermines the fundamental fairness of the electoral process. Marks versus Stinton and all that good stuff, some circuits and all that. 196. Separate from equal protection clause, the 14th Amendment's due process clause protects the fundamental rights to vote against the disenfranchisement of a state electorate. Duncan versus Pyth or something. When an election process reaches the point of patent and fundamental unfairness, there is a due process violation. Florida State Conference, NAACP versus Browning. Roe, Alabama, Curry, Baker, all the classics. If the election process itself reaches the point of patent and fundamental unfairness, a violation of the due process clause may be indicated and relief under squiggly line 1983, therefore in order. Marks versus Stinton, enjoining winning state Senate candidate from exercising official authorities where absentee ballots were obtained and cast illegally. That's okay. Mark versus Stanton in 1994, enjoining winning state Senate candidate from exercising official authority where absentee ballots were obtained and cast illegally. Okay, cool. Precedent, I think that's called. Part of court's justification for such a ruling in the Supreme Court's is the Supreme Court's recognition that the right to vote and to free and fair elections is one that is a preservative of other basic civil and political rights. See Black 209, quoting Burt Reynolds. Since the right to exercise the franchise in a free and unimpaired manner is preservative to other basic civil and political rights, any alleged infringement of the right of citizens to vote must be carefully and meticulously scrutinized. Yeah, see also Yick Wo versus Hopkins. It'll tell you everything. 1886. The political franchise of voting. The political franchise of voting is regarded as a fundamental political right because preservatives of all rights. Because I don't know what that sick means. 198. The right to vote. The right to have one's vote counted and the right to have one's vote given equal weight are basic and fundamental constitutional rights incorporated in the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Black 209 F sup 2D BBD 2D at 900. A state law that allows local election officials to impose different voting schemes upon some portions of the electorate and not other violates due process. Sure does. Just as the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment prohibits state officials from improperly diluting the right to vote, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment forbids state officials from unlawfully eliminating the fundamental right. Just ask Duncan at 657 FD douche douche. Having once granted the right to vote on equal terms, defendants may not, by later arbitrary or disparate treatment, value one person's vote over that of another. We are repeating ourselves a lot. 199. In statewide and federal elections conducted in the state of Georgia, including without limitation the November 3rd, 2020 general election, all candidates, political parties, and voters, including without limitation plaintiffs, have a vested interest in being presented and having meaningful access to observe and monitor the electoral process to ensure that it is properly administered in every election district and otherwise free, fair, and transparent. Moreover, through its provisions involving watchers and representatives, the Georgia Election Code ensures that all candidates and political parties, including without limitation plaintiff, Republicans, and the Trump campaign, shall be present and have meaningful access to observe and monitor the electoral process to ensure that it is properly administered in every election district and otherwise free and fair and transparent, and all the goodies. 201. Defendants have a duty to guard against deprivation of the right to vote through the delusion of validly cast ballots by ballot fraud or election tampering. Okay, so defendants have a duty, y'all have a duty to guard against deprivation, to deprive of the right to vote through the delusion of validly casted ballots by ballot fraud or election tampering. Yeah, it should count. Rather than heeding these mandates and duties, defendants arbitrarily and capriciously denied the Trump campaign and Republicans meaningful access to observe and monitor the electoral process by A, mandating that representatives at the pre-canvass and canvass of all absentee and mail-in ballots be either Georgia barred attorneys or qualified registered electors of the county in which they sought to observe and monitor. And B, not allowing watchers and representatives to visibly see and review all envelopes containing official absentee and mail-in ballots, either at the time or before they were opened and or when such ballots were counted and recorded. Instead, defendants refused to credential all of the Trump campaign's submitted watchers and representatives, and or kept the Trump campaign's watchers and representatives by security and metal barricades from the areas where the inspection, opening, and counting of absentee and mail-in ballots were taking place. The lack of meaningful access with actual access to to see the ballots invited further fraud and cast doubt on the validity of the proceedings. Consequently, defendants created a system whereby it was physically impossible for the candidates and political parties to view the ballots and verify that illegally cast ballots were not opened and counted. 203. Defendants intentionally and or arbitrarily and capriciously denied plaintiffs access to and or obstructed actual observation and monitoring of the absentee and mail-in ballots being pre-canvassed and canvassed by defendants, and included the unlawfully not counting and including defendants intentionally and or arbitrarily and capriciously denied plaintiffs access to and or obstructed actual observation and monitoring of the absentee and mail-in ballots being pre-canvassed and canvassed by defendants, and included the unlawfully not counting and including uncounted mail ballots, and that they failed to follow absentee ballot requirements when thousands of voters received ballots that they never requested, in big bold letters. Defendants have acted and will continue to act under color of state law to violate the right to vote and due process as secured by the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Plaintiffs have no adequate remedy at law and will suffer serious and irreparable harm unless the injunctive relief requested herein is granted. 205. When we consider the harm of these uncounted votes and ballots not ordered by the voters themselves, and the potential that many of these unordered ballots may in fact have been improperly voted and also prevented proper voting at the polls, the mail ballot system has clearly failed in the state of Georgia and did so on a large scale and widespread basis. The size of the voting failure, whether accidental or intentional, are multiples larger than the margin in the state. For these reasons, Georgia cannot reasonably rely on the results of the mail vote. Relief sought is the elimination of the mail ballots from counting in the 2020 election. That's a big one. Relief sought is the elimination of the mail ballots from counting in the 2020 election. Alternatively, the presidential electors for the state of Georgia should be disqualified from counting towards the 2020 election. 207, the United States Code 3 U.S. 5 provides that if any state shall have provided by laws enacted prior to the day fixed for the appointment of the electors for its final determination of any controversy or contest concerning the appointment of all or any of the electors of such state by judicial or other methods or procedures, and such determination shall have been made at least 6 days before the time fixed for the meeting of the electors, such determination made pursuant to such law so existing on said day, and made at least 6 days prior to said time of meeting of the electors, shall be conclusive and shall govern in the counting of the electoral votes as provided in the Constitution, and as hereafter regulated, so far as the ascertainment of the electors appointed by such state is concerned. I have no clue what I just read. If the state shall provide by law enacted prior to the day fixed for its final determination in contest concerning the appointment of the elected. I'll have to get back to that. I have no idea what I just read, but it is 3 U.S.C.S. squiggly line 5. Oh, we're going to request a little bit of relief. Accordingly, plaintiffs seek an emergency order instructing defendants to decertify the results of the general election for the office of the President 209. In the alternative, plaintiffs seek an emergency order prohibiting defendants from including any certified results from the general election, the tabulation of absentee and mailing ballots which do not comply with the election code, including, without limitation, the tabulation of absentee and mail-in ballots. Trump's campaign watchers were prevented from observing, or based on the tabulation of individually cast absentee and mail-in ballots which, 1, lack a secrecy envelope or contained on that envelope any text, mark, or symbol which reveals the elector's identity, political affiliation, or candidate preference. Do not include on the outside, or 2, do not include on the outside envelope a complete declaration that is dated and signed by the elector, or 3, are delivered in person by third party and non-disabled. Are delivered in person by third parties. Are delivered in third person by third parties for non-disabled voters. That's a new one. Okay. Kick those out. When we consider the harm of these uncounted votes and ballots not ordered by the voters themselves, and the potential that many of these unordered ballots may in fact have been improperly voted and also prevented proper voting at the polls, the mail-in ballot system has clearly failed in the state of Georgia and did so on a large scale and widespread basis. The size of the voting failures, whether accidental or intentional, are multiples larger than the margin in the state. For these reasons, Georgia cannot reasonably rely on the results of the mail vote. Relief sought is the elimination of the mail ballots from counting in the 2020 election. Alternatively, the electors for the state of Georgia should be disqualified from counting towards the 2020 election. I don't get that totally, but alternatively, the electors of the state of Georgia should be directed to vote for President Trump. Donald Trump. Interesting. For these reasons, plaintiff asked the court to enter a judgment in their favor and provide the following emergency relief. An order directing Governor Kemp, Secretary Spurg, and the Georgia State Board of Elections to decertify the election results. All right, step 1. An order enjoining Governor Kemp from transmitting the currently certified election results to the Electoral College. All right, stop that. An order requiring Governor Kemp to transmit certified election results that state that President Donald Trump is the winner of the election. Okay? An immediate order to impound all the voting machines and software in Georgia for expert inspection by the plaintiffs. Sure. An order that no votes received or tabulated by machines that were not certified as required by federal and state law be counted. Number 6, a declaratory judgment declaring that Georgia Secretary of State Rule 183.1140915 violates the Electors and Elections Clause, U.S. Constitution, Art 1, squiggly line 4. 7, a declaratory judgment declaring that Georgia's failed system of signature verification violates the Electors and Elections Clause by working a de facto abolition of the signature verification requirement. A de facto abolition, like, we threw it out. All right. Number 8, a declaratory judgment declaring that current certified election results violates the Due Process Clause, U.S. Constitution, Amendment 14th, A declaration judgment declaring that mail-in and absentee ballot fraud must be remedied with a full manual recount and statistically valid sampling that properly verifies the signature on absentee ballot envelopes and that invalidates the certified results if the recount or sampling analysis shows a sufficient number of ineligible absentee ballots were found. Oh, okay, so they must be on to something there. Full recount, statistically valid sampling, proper verified. Oh, statistically valid sampling. That's a good one. Verifies the signature on absentee. Okay, so let's check those signatures. Number 10, an emergency declaration judgment that voting machines be seized and impounded immediately for forensics audit by plaintiff experts. Number 11, a declaratory judgment declaring absentee ballot fraud occurred in violation of constitutional rights, election laws, and under state laws. Number 12, a permanent injunction prohibiting the governor and secretary of state from transmitting the current certified results to the Electoral College based on overwhelming evidence of election tampering. 13, immediate production of 36 hours of security camera footage, recording of all rooms used in the voting process at State Farm Arena in Fulton County, Georgia, from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. until 6 p.m. on November 3rd. From 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. until 6 p.m., all right, whatever, on November 3rd. Plaintiffs further request the court grant such other relief as is just and proper, including but not limited to the costs of this action and their responsible attorney fees and expenses pursuant to 42 U.S. C. 1988, respectfully submitted this 25th day of November 2020. Caldwell, Douche, Sidney, Texas Bar, Virginia, Texas Bar. Is that where we're going next? Lynn Wood, Howard, Cleanson Hedler. I don't know who you are. Location Administrator, Attorney Plaintiff. Okay. Well, slightly excruciating, but I get your case. Let's see how it goes. All right. I'm going to bed.